The black stone of the drowned crypt floor is cold against my cheek, smelling of wet rot and ancient stagnant water. Above me, through layers of rock and centuries of silence, a choir sings. It is not a hymn of peace, it is a vibration that shakes the dust from the ceiling. A deep, thrumming resonance that tells me something monumental is happening on the surface. The Saint King's coronation. I feel it in my teeth. Then, pain. A sharp, tearing agony erupts in my chest, not from a wound, but from something embedded in me. I try to push myself up, but my body feels wrong, heavy, dense, like lead wrapped in skin that is too tight. My hand hits the floor, and instead of a palm, there is a slick, oily resistance. I look down. Every candle in the crypt ignites at once. Not orange, not yellow, but a violent, impossible violet. The light does not cast shadows, it absorbs them. And on my chest, fused to my sternum like a second ribcage, is a cracked obsidian rosary. It pulses with a rhythmic thumping that matches the choir above. Thump, thump, like a heart. But I don't have one anymore. Or at least I didn't 5 seconds ago. Boss? The voice is dry, papery, and utterly unimpressed. I turn my head, the movement stiff and grinding. A goblin sits cross-legged on a pile of rubble, whittling a piece of gristle with a jagged stone knife. He has no eyes, just smooth, scarred skin where they should be, but he is looking right at me. I can hear you thinking, Grindel Bricksnout says, blowing dust off his blade. It's loud, and it sounds like panic. Panic is bad for structural integrity, boss. The walls hate anxiety. Where am I? I ask. My voice comes out wrong, resonant, layered, as if spoken by 3 throats at once. Who are you? Grindel chuckles, a sound like pebbles in a tin can. He stands up, brushing rubble from his tunic. You're in the Abyssal Basilica, specifically floor 1. The drowned crypt. And I'm Grindel Bricksnout, your mason, your steward, and currently the only thing keeping this building from collapsing into a pile of existential dread. As for who you are, he tilts his head. You're the core lord, the one who came back. I am Min-jae Park, I snap. The name feels familiar, but distant, like a book I read years ago. I was an urban planner in Seoul. I was killed by a construction crane. Well, fate has a twisted sense of humor, Grindel says, gesturing to the obsidian rosary on my chest. Or rather, fate has a budget constraint. Look down, boss. I look at my hands. They are translucent, shifting between flesh and dark stone. A system window flickers into existence before my eyes, not projected, but burned directly onto my vision. Core Lord Morrow, Abyssal Basilica, Floor 1. Core integrity, 12%. Warning, structural death in 29 days, 18 hours, 12%. I whisper. The stone around us begins to shed dust, tiny shards falling like snow. What does that mean? It means you're a building, boss, Grindel says cheerfully, and buildings without foundations tend to fall down. Right now, your foundation is leaking mana like a sieve in a flood. You need fuel, you need power. And judging by the choir above, he pauses, listening to the thrumming vibration that grows louder. I'd say the Holy Solarian Empire just put a giant target on our back. Coronation Day means peak mana density for the Saint King, which means you have 29 days to eat enough holy energy to keep from shattering, or I get to start packing my tools because we're going bankrupt. I don't understand, I say, struggling to stand. My legs feel like pillars of granite. Why am I a dungeon core? Why are you here? Grindel shrugs, picking up a stray candle that is still burning violet. The last core lord got fired by the church, sealed us in, left me with the keys and a lot of unpaid invoices. Then you woke up. Now we have a problem. A big one. Which is? The Inquisition, Grindel says, his blind face turning toward the ceiling. Lord Versable is above us. He's hunting for a residual anomaly. Translation, he knows something is back down here. And he's not bringing priests, he's bringing steel. The choir above swells to a crescendo, then cuts off abruptly. Silence follows, heavy and suffocating. Then, a single, clear bell tolls from the cathedral above. It sounds like a gavel. 3 days earlier, Min-jae Park died in a heap of twisted rebar and concrete dust, the smell of gasoline choking his last breath. He expected nothingness. He did not expect to wake up face down on cold black stone as every candle in a drowned crypt ignites violet. He hears a coronation choir vibrating through the ceiling and discovers the cracked obsidian rosary fused to his chest. Grindel Bricksnout, a blind goblin mason sitting atop a pile of rubble nearby, looks down at him with detached amusement. "Boss," Grindel says, whittling his stone. Grindel tosses the whittled stick onto the rubble pile. It clatters against a rusted iron bar, the sound sharp in the sudden silence. He hops down from his perch, his bare feet making no sound on the wet stone. He walks toward me, his head tilting as if listening to the air itself. "You're panicking again," Grindel says. "Your heart isn't beating, Min-jae, but your core is vibrating. It's annoying the imps." I look past him. In the corner of the crypt, 3 small fires have coalesced into shapes. They are Ember Imp named Wick, Tallow, and Soot. Wick is pacing in a tight circle, leaving scorch marks on the damp floor. Tallow is sitting with her knees to her chest, staring at her hands. Soot is simply watching me with wide, molten eyes. "Stop that," I say. My voice still echoes, layering over itself like a choir of ghosts. "I don't know what this is." Grindel stops 3 paces away. He reaches out a hand, his fingers hovering inches from the cracked obsidian rosary fused to my chest. He doesn't touch it. He can't. The air around it shimmers with heat and mana. "You're Min-jae Park," Grindel says. "You were an urban planner. You designed sewer systems for the poor in Seoul because the wealthy districts got all the attention. You died under a crane because the budget was cut." He taps his blind nose. "And now you are Core Lord Morrow. The Abyssal Basilica is yours. Or rather, you are it. And right now, your foundation is rotting." "I am not a building," I say. The violet candles flicker in response to my agitation, casting long, jagged shadows that seem to cling to the walls. "I am a person. I have memories. I have structural integrity at 12%. Grindel interrupts. He waves a hand dismissively. "Memories are load-bearing only if they help you pay the rent. And right now, the rent is mana. Lots of it." He turns and limps toward a large, rusted door set into the far wall. It is half submerged in a shallow pool of black water. He kicks the lock mechanism with his heel. It groans, then swings open. Beyond it, darkness yawns, smelling of ozone and old blood. Before we get into the story, do me a quick favor. Like this video, subscribe, and comment what story you want to see next. Now, let's begin. "Where are you going?" I ask. I try to move my legs, but they feel heavy, fused to the floor. I am not standing on stone, I am of the stone. "To check the Lockward cell," Grindel says over his shoulder. "Seraphine Vale has been screaming in there for 3 days. She thinks she's dead. She's mostly right, technically. But she's also mostly wrong because her soul is trapped in a divine prison and she doesn't know how to get out." "Who is Seraphine?" I ask. "A royal inquisitor," Grindel says. "Formerly, she found something she wasn't supposed to see. The church put her in here because Lord Vare Sable likes his puzzles private. Vare is above us, you know. He's the Ashen Inquisition commander. Precise, elegant, terrifying. He hates anomalies. And right now, Min-jae, you are the biggest anomaly since the Saint King first cracked open the sky." I look down at my hands again. They are translucent, shimmering with violet light. I can see the bones, but they are made of obsidian glass. I can see the floor through my own palms. "How do I eat mana?" I ask. Grindel stops at the threshold of the darkness. He turns back, his blind face unreadable, but his smile visible in the set of his jaw. "That's the easy part," he says. "You wait for the church to send you guests. They always send guests. It's what they do best." He steps into the dark. The rusted door begins to swing shut on its own, grinding against the stone floor. "Wait," I say. Panic rises in my throat, thick and cold. How do I control it? How do I fix this? Grindel's voice comes from the darkness before he disappears. You don't fix a building, boss. You reinforce it. And you start by getting out of the crypt. The Black Choir core is waking up. It doesn't like being ignored. The door slams shut. The sound is final. I am alone in the violet light. The choir above is silent now, replaced by the low, rhythmic thrumming of the core inside my chest. Thump, thump. I try to stand. My body does not respond. Instead, the floor beneath me ripples. Stone flows like water, lifting me up. I am no longer standing on the crypt floor. I am in it. I can feel the weight of the cathedral above, ton after ton of granite and gold, pressing down. I can feel the sewer gates beyond the wall, rusted and crumbling. I can feel the Lockward cell 3 levels deeper, humming with trapped divine energy. Core Lord Morrow, Abyssal Basilica, Floor 1, System active. The words burn in my vision. The text floats in my vision, burning violet against the darkness of the crypt. What is it? Is this divine intervention? Or just another layer of bureaucracy? Grindel's voice drifts back from behind the closing door. It's the interface, boss. The user manual you didn't ask for but definitely need. Stop arguing with the UI and look at your stats. I try to look down, but my perspective is suddenly wide, omniscient, anchored to the center of the room. I see the Black Choir core pulsing in my chest, or rather, where my chest used to be. It is a jagged shard of obsidian, cracked and leaking wisps of violet light into the air. Around it, the health bar hangs in the air like a cruel joke. The stone around us begins to shed dust, tiny shards falling like snow. What does that mean? It means you're a building boss, Grindel says cheerfully, and buildings without foundations tend to fall down. Right now, your foundation is leaking mana like a sieve in a flood. You need fuel. You need power. And judging by the choir above, he pauses, listening to the thrumming vibration that grows louder. I'd say the Holy Solarian Empire just put a giant target on our back. Coronation Day means peak mana density for the Saint King, which means you have 29 days to eat enough holy energy to keep from shattering, or I get to start packing my tools because we're going bankrupt. My legs feel like pillars of granite. Why am I a dungeon core? Why are you here? Grindel shrugs, picking up a stray candle that is still burning violet. The last core lord got fired by the church, sealed us in, left me with the keys and a lot of unpaid invoices. Then you woke up. Now we have a problem. A big one. Which is, the Inquisition, Grindel says, his blind face turning toward the ceiling. Lord Ver Sable is above us. He's hunting for a residual anomaly. Translation, he knows something is back down here. And he's not bringing priests. He's bringing steel. The choir above swells to a crescendo, then cuts off abruptly. Silence follows, heavy and suffocating. Then a single, clear bell tolls from the cathedral above. It sounds like a gavel. Ver doesn't hunt anomalies, I say, the realization cold in my non-beating heart. He hunts heretics. He hunts dissenters. He hunts whatever threatens the Saint King's holy math, Grindel corrects. And right now, you are an error in the equation. A glitch in the cathedral's floorboards. If he finds you before you stabilize, he will tear this basilica apart brick by brick to get to you. I look at the 3 imps again. Wick has stopped pacing. Tallow is still staring at her hands. Soot is watching me. Can we fight him? I ask. The question feels absurd. I am a dungeon heart with 12% health. He is an Inquisition commander with an army. You have no army, Grindel says flatly. You have 3 imps and a mason who hasn't had a proper sandwich in 300 years. You have Seraphine Vale locked in the basement, screaming about justice. And you have me. Who is she? I ask, looking toward the rusted door. The one in the Lockward cell. Is she enemy? No, Grindel says. His tone softens, just for a second. She's a prisoner of the church who saw too much. She knows about the harvest mark. She knows the Saint King isn't saving the empire, he's farming it. The harvest mark? I ask. The term triggers a spike of mana in my core, painful and sharp. Yes, Grindel says. A symbol burned into the soul of every citizen in Aurelis. It tracks their faith, their fear, their surrender. When the Saint King needs more power, he doesn't pray, he harvests. And when he's hungry, he lets the sentence hang in the air, heavy with implication. He takes a piece of us, I say. The violet light in the room dims, as if my core is recoiling at the thought. Precisely, Grindel says, and Seraphine found the ledger. The one that shows exactly how many people have been harvested to keep Aurelian's soul alive. She tried to expose him, so they locked her in a cell designed to break minds. But she's still screaming, and as long as she screams, the mark doesn't quite hold. I look at my hands again. They are solid now, but still translucent, made of glass and light. So I need mana, I say. Not just any mana. Holy mana. From the Saint King himself? Or from his followers? Grindel says, fear generates mana. Hope generates mana. Faith generates mana. The church has built an entire economy on emotional extraction. You want to survive? You need to tap into that flow. How, I ask. I can't just walk out there and start harvesting people. No, Grindel agrees. You don't. Not yet. But you can start with Wick scurries forward, his tiny claws clicking against the wet stone. He holds up a charred twig, pointing it at the collapsed sewer gate. Boss, he says, his voice like grinding gravel. The back door is open, but it's not empty. I focus my vision on the grate. Through the cracks, I see only darkness, but I can feel the pull of the city above. The scent of ozone and rotting garbage wafts down through the damp air. What are you saying? I ask. I'm saying soot chimes in, floating cross-legged in midair, that there are people down there, lots of them. Smelling like fear and stale bread, refugees, Grindel says, nodding sagely, or just desperate rats looking for dry ground. It doesn't matter who they are. They're outside the wards. Their mana is raw, unfiltered by the church's holy filters. It's dirty, but it will keep us alive longer than waiting for Ver to dig us up. I look at the rusted gate. Then I look at my own hands, translucent and shimmering with violet light. If I bring them in, I say slowly, testing the weight of the idea, the church will know immediately. The wards will flare, they'll come running. Let them come, Grindel says. He taps his pickaxe against his palm.
I've got mortar mixed for days. We can reinforce the gate, turn it into a choke point. If they come with steel, we hit them with stone. If they come with faith, we let it burn out on our outer shell. And if they don't come,
Tilting his head,
they will.
Grindel says,
The emperor is crowned today. The streets are full of pilgrims who have lost everything to the taxes and the prayers. They need a place to hide. They need a miracle. Or at least a warm, dry room.
I feel a strange tightening in my chest, or where my chest should be. It's not anxiety. It's calculation. I was an urban planner. I know how systems break when they fail to serve the people they're meant to protect. This cathedral is a machine, and I am its new engine. If the input is wrong, the output is disaster. What about Seraphine, I ask. She's down there too. Seraphine is a liability, Grindel says bluntly, but she's also a key. She knows the codes to the lower vaults. She knows where the hidden aqueducts are. If we get her out, she can help us navigate the old infrastructure. If we leave her in, she'll just scream until her voice gives out, and the Saint King will eventually come down here to silence her permanently. I look at the Lockward cell. It's sealed behind 3 inches of enchanted lead glass. Inside, I can feel Seraphine's presence. It's not angry. It's waiting. Get her out, I say, but keep her in the central chamber, until I'm sure she's safe from them. Grindel grins, showing yellowed teeth. Yes, boss. Right away. Don't worry about the screaming. I'll tell her you're a nice guy who just woke up with a hangover. I watch him turn away. The 3 imps follow him, chattering about supplies and structural integrity. I am left alone in the violet gloom, staring at the cracked obsidian rosary fused to my chest. Core Lord Morrow. Abyssal Basilica, Floor 1. System active. The text burns in my vision again, but this time there's a new line below it. Quest updated. Secure the first refugees. Reward, plus 1% core integrity per 5 souls stabilized. Failure, structural collapse. I close my eyes. The choir above is silent now. The bells have stopped. All that remains is the hum of the core and the distant, muffled sounds of a city celebrating its own death. Grindel returns 10 minutes later, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smells of mildew and old blood. He looks exhausted, but his eyes are bright. It's done, he says. I've pried open the gate enough for them to squeeze through. They're terrified, boss. Clumsy. But they're coming, and they're hungry. How many, I ask? 12, maybe 13. I lost one in the dark, or maybe he just fell in. Hard to tell with humans. My core pulses, reacting to the spike in mana from the newly arrived souls. Bring them to the central atrium, I say. Do not let them see me, not yet. Grindel pauses at the threshold. They'll ask who rules here. Tell them the basilica is sleeping, I say, and that they must be quiet so it can dream. He nods, satisfied. A mysterious overlord, classic villain origin story. Works every time. As he leaves, Wick flies back to my side. He lands on a stone pillar, watching me with wide, burning eyes. Boss, he says quietly. Are we going to be good guys? I look at the 3 imps, at the cracked core in my chest, at the ceiling above where Saint King Aurelian's soul is being. Cold black stone bit into Min-jae's cheek as consciousness returned, sharp and unwelcome. The air was thick with the scent of stagnant water and old incense that had long since rotted into something chemical and sweet. Above him, a drowned crypt groaned under the weight of 10 years of silence. Every candle in the room igniting violet simultaneously, their flames licking at shadows that had no business moving. A coronation choir vibrated through the ceiling, a low-frequency hum that rattled his teeth and made the obsidian rosary fuse to his chest pulse with a sickly rhythm. Grindel stood over him, eyes wide with reverence and terror. "You're back!" Min-jae tried to sit up, but his body felt like it was made of broken glass. The system's voice echoed in his skull, cold and mechanical. Core integrity at 12%. Dying is not metaphorical. He looked down at the cracked black beads embedded in his sternum. They were part of him now, or he was part of them.
Explain.
His voice sounded wrong, hollowed out by the damp.
The basilica was sealed after its rulers rebelled against the first Saint King.
Grindel whispered, stepping back as if afraid Min-jae might explode.
We thought you were dead. We thought the core lord was a myth. Myth or not, I'm here.
He pushed himself up, ignoring the shards of stone shedding from his own body like dandruff. Where is the mana? There are none left, my lord. The harvest mark took everything. We are just echoes. Grindel bowed low. But there is one source, floor 1. Lockwood cell. Min-jae stared at him.
Lockwood cell? The prisoner who was executed. She survived the stasis. She's still alive.
The thought of another soul in this place made Min-jae's stomach turn. He had no mana, no strength, and no plan. But the prompt in his mind was clear. Follow the surviving source. He stood, his knees shaking, and began the long walk toward floor 1. The stone corridors were narrow, lined with bones that whispered when he passed. Each step felt like a transaction, his life force trading for movement. When he reached the only intact door on floor 1, it was locked. Not by a key, but by a seal of holy pressure. Min-jae pressed his hand against it. The obsidian rosary burned cold. He pushed, and the door gave way with a shriek of metal. Inside, the room was small, circular, and filled with a light that had no source. In the center, suspended in silver chains that hung from the ceiling like spiderwebs, was a woman. She hung vertically, her feet inches above the floor, her body wrapped in tattered vestments. Her hair was long and white, floating around her as if underwater. Min-jae stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The air here was different, cleaner, sharper. He approached slowly, his eyes fixed on her face. She was pale, her skin translucent, but her features were intact, beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Dangerous. Seraphine Vale opened her eyes. They were dark, void-like, and instantly focused on him. On the obsidian rosary fused to his chest. She struggled against the chains. The metal groaned, stretching taut. "You," she breathed. Her voice was raspy from disuse, like dry leaves crushing together. The core lord, Min-jae, stopped 2 feet away. He didn't know what to say. He didn't have anything to offer her except his own impending death. "I'm here to help you down," he said. Seraphine tilted her head, studying him with a mixture of suspicion and hatred.
Help. You come from the church's heart, wearing its mark. Why should I trust you? Because I'm dying too.
He tapped the rosary on his chest. It pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The basilica killed everyone. Now it wants me to finish the job. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "And you're not doing it?" "I don't know what I'm doing," Min-jae admitted. He reached out a hand toward the chains. "But if I can get you down, maybe we can both find a way out." For a moment, Seraphine just stared at him. Then she laughed, a short, bitter sound.
Out? There is no out, Lord Morrow. Only deeper in. Or dead. I prefer alive.
He grabbed the nearest chain. It was cold and slick with residue. He pulled. It didn't budge. The silver links held fast, anchored by magic he couldn't see.
"You can't pull them free. They're bound to the floor's intent. You need a key. Or blood."
Min-jae frowned.
"Blood? The chains feed on resistance?"
She leaned forward as much as she could, her neck straining.
"Or surrender. If you offer your core, they might yield."
Min-jae looked at the rosary again. His core integrity was dropping, 11%. He felt it in his lungs, a heaviness that made every breath a struggle. If he offered more, he would collapse before he even helped her. "I can't give you my core," he said firmly. "I need it to stay alive." Seraphine Vale's expression hardened into something sharp enough to cut glass. She tilted her head, the chains clinking with a sound like dying coins. "Then you are useless. Just another ghost wearing a corpse." Min-jae Park gripped his own wrists, feeling the bones grind against each other without friction. His core integrity flickered in his peripheral vision, a red bar dropping towards 0. He looked at the ceiling of the cell, where water stained the stone in dark, jagged maps.
"I didn't come here to debate utility. I came because you're the only thing left that isn't ash. Comforting."
She shifted her weight, ignoring the way the chains bit into her shoulders. Her eyes drifted back to his chest, where the obsidian rosary sat, fused to his sternum like a tumor.
That mark on you, it's not just a key. It's a leash. And you're pulling it tight around my neck. I don't control the mark.
He took a step closer, the smell of ozone and old blood hitting him full force. "It controls me, but I'm trying to break the circuit. That requires power. Your mana signature is the only one that hasn't been drained dry. You are the source." "I am a battery," Seraphine corrected. Her voice was flat, devoid of the tremor from before. She stared at him with cold, clinical interest.
And you are the drill. Tell me, Lord Morrow, when do you plan to stop pretending you care about my condition and start sucking me dry? I'm not going to suck you dry.
He reached out, his fingers inches from the silver links nearest her shoulder. The metal hummed with a low, violent frequency that made his teeth ache.
"I need to understand how this prison works. If I can destabilize the anchor, maybe I can lower your resistance. By bleeding on it?"
She didn't flinch as his hand brushed the chain. Sparks flew, white-hot and silent, jumping from the metal to his skin. He pulled back, hissing through his teeth.
Careful. The church doesn't let go easily, even now. I'm not worried about the church.
He rubbed the burn on his knuckles, watching the skin blister and blacken instantly before slowly healing.
"I'm worried about the ground beneath us. It's cracking, literally. I feel it in my bones. We don't have time for your riddles. My riddles keep me alive."
She leaned her head back against the chain, closing her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, they were focused on him again, sharp and predatory.
You think I've been hanging here for 10 years waiting for a savior? I've been waiting for someone stupid enough to try. That makes us even.
He looked up at the ceiling, tracking the source of the vibration that had greeted him in the crypt. The coronation choir was louder now, or maybe it was just closer.
"Why are you still conscious? Holy stasis should have killed you years ago. Because I am stubborn.
She opened her eyes wide, forcing him to look at them.
And because the church needed a scapegoat. They couldn't execute me without admitting their secret, so they kept me here, rotting alive, a monument to their mercy.
And what was the secret?
He turned his attention back to the chains, trying to find a weak point, a knot, anything. His fingers found nothing but smooth, unyielding silver. Seraphine Vale laughed again. It was a dry, brittle sound that echoed in the small cell.
The harvest mark isn't just about mana. It's about fear. They don't take life, they take panic. Every time someone realizes there is no way out, the mark grows stronger, and I am the center of it, the focal point.
Min-jae froze. His hand stopped moving.
Fear generates mana?
She tilted her head, a cruel smile touching her lips.
You're the core lord, don't you feel it? Every time you panic, every time you despair, this place gets stronger. We are feeding it, you and I.
Min-jae looked down at his chest. The obsidian beads were pulsing faster, syncing with his heartbeat. He could feel the drain on his core accelerating, not because he was using power, but because his own fear was being harvested by the mark itself.
If that's true,
Then keeping me alive is bad for you. Oh, it's complicated.
She relaxed slightly in the chains, as if settling in for a long conversation. The church wants me to break so they can harvest the final surge. You want me to live so you can use my power. We are trapped together, Lord Morrow. Whether we like it or not. Min-jae stepped back, his mind racing. The system prompt he had received earlier flashed in his memory, but the words were gone now, replaced by the visceral reality of his crumbling body. He had no choice. He had to use her. But if she was right, using her would only deepen their mutual destruction.
then we have a problem.
He looked at the ceiling again. A drop of water fell from a crack in the stone, landing on his shoulder. It sizzled. Because the ceiling is leaking. She didn't flinch. She watched the stain spread with the detached curiosity of a surgeon observing a patient's final tremors. The ceiling is old, she said. It leaks because the stone above is tired of holding back the dark. Min-jae wiped his shoulder, watching the black residue smear on his glove. He looked up at the stained masonry, then back to her face. The tension in the room had shifted from ideological to visceral. The air smelled of wet iron and ozone.
Is it holy water? It is memory, concentrated, pressurized. It burns what does not belong here. Like you.
I don't belong anywhere right now.
He stepped forward again, ignoring the burn on his knuckles from earlier. The silver chains hummed louder, reacting to his proximity.
If I break these, will it stop? You cannot break them?
Her voice was calm, almost bored.
They are not metal. They are time frozen into shape. You would have to unlive the last 10 years to loosen a single link.
Min-jae paused. His core integrity hovered at 10%. The red bar in his vision flickered dangerously low. Every second he stood there, wasting energy on futile gestures, the rosary on his chest grew heavier. Then help me bypass them, he said. You know how this place works. You've been living in it. I have been dying in it, Seraphine corrected. She shifted her weight, the chains clinking softly.
And I will not teach you how to murder your own kind, just because you are desperate for a tool. I am not asking you to murder anyone.
He reached out, his hand hovering over the chain nearest her wrist. The metal radiated a cold so deep it felt hot.
I am asking you to let me save you. Why?
She didn't pull away. Her eyes locked onto his, searching for the lie. There was none. That seemed to irritate her more than if he had lied.
Is it guilt? Do you feel bad for the church? Or are you just looking for a companion to scream with when you die? I'm looking for someone who knows the truth.
He pulled his hand back, clutching it into a fist. The skin was raw and blistered.
You said fear generates mana. That changes everything. If I can control that, if I can stop feeding the mark, you cannot control what you do not understand.
She tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she had already solved but refused to share the answer to. And you understand nothing. You are a child playing with fire because you are cold.
I know enough to know that if I don't get you down, we both die.
His voice rose, cracking with the strain of his failing core.
So stop talking about principles and start talking about solutions. What do I need? Blood? Magic? A specific prayer? Nothing.
She closed her eyes for a brief second. When she opened them, her expression was unreadable.
You are already doing it wrong. You think you are the actor. You are not. You are the audience. The chains only release when the observer looks away.
Min-jae frowned.
Look away? Cease your desperation?
She leaned forward, the chains straining taut.
Stop trying to save me, stop trying to survive. Let go of the need to fix this moment. If you want these chains to yield, you must believe they are already broken.
That's insane.
He shook his head, frustration bubbling up in his chest.
You expect me to ignore the fact that I'm literally burning alive? I expect you to accept it.
Her voice was sharp, cutting through his panic like a scalpel.
As long as you fear the burn, the water will keep pouring. As long as you fight the chains, they will tighten. Release the struggle, Core Lord. That is the only key.
Min-jae stared at her. The logic was flawed, impossible to execute under such extreme duress. His core integrity dropped to 9%. The pain in his chest was a constant, grinding agony. He looked at the ceiling again, a thick bead of water gathered in a crack, trembling with imminent release.
If I let go,
Min-jae said slowly.
I might die. You are already dead.
She smiled, a thin, humorless curve of her lips.
You just haven't stopped moving yet. Prove me wrong, or prove the mark right. Choose.
The water droplet detached from the ceiling. It fell toward Min-jae's head. He didn't move to dodge it. He looked at Seraphine, then at the rosary fused to his skin. He felt the pull of the harvest mark, the insatiable hunger for his terror. It was feeding on his fear of her refusal. Min-jae closed his eyes. He exhaled, letting the air rush out of his lungs, feeling his muscles loosen despite the pain. He stopped trying to pry the chains apart. He stopped trying to calculate the structural integrity of the cell. He simply stood there, emptying himself of intent. The water hit his head with a hiss, steaming instantly. The water on his scalp cooled rapidly, losing its sizzle but leaving a stinging heat that made his skin prickle. He blinked, waiting for the chains to loosen, for Seraphine's logic to unravel in a burst of magical release. It did not happen. The silver links remained rigid, gleaming with an indifferent, cruel luster. The stone floor beneath his boots felt solid, unyielding.
You failed.
She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired.
You let go of the fear, but you did not let go of the expectation. You are still waiting for a reward. The chains sense your hope. They feed on it just as they fed on your terror.
Min-jae wiped his face with the back of his hand. His fingers came away wet and red. Hope is not a resource, he snapped.
It's a delusion. And I'm done with both. Then stop looking at me.
She turned her head to the side, fixing her gaze on the dark corner of the cell where shadows pooled thickest.
Look anywhere else. Look at the wall. Look at your own boots. Just don't look at me like I am the answer. I'm not looking for an answer.
He took a step back, putting distance between them. The rosary on his chest pulsed, a slow, heavy thud against his sternum. I'm looking for a way out. You said this place is fed by panic, by the realization that there is no way out. So if I remove your ability to feel fear, what happens? Seraphine laughed again. It was a short, sharp bark of sound.
You think you can lobotomize me? That you can strip away 10 years of survival instinct in 3 seconds? I don't need to strip it.
He looked up at the ceiling. Another drop formed, darker this time, swirling with faint green hues. I just need to make sure you're too distracted to feel it. Distracted by what? She asked. Her eyes flicked back to him, wary now.
What are you planning? The church buried you under the altar.
He walked closer to the chains again, but this time he didn't reach for them. He reached for the wall beside her head. The stone was cold and damp.
That means someone built a ceiling over you. Someone designed this prison. If I can make that ceiling feel like it's collapsing, will your fear spike? Yes.
Her voice dropped.
But why would you want to hurt me more? Because pain is predictable.
Min-jae said.
Fear is volatile, and volatility creates instability. Instability breaks rules.
He placed his palm flat against the wet stone next to her head. He didn't push. He simply pushed mana into the rock, a tiny, precise packet of energy he could barely afford to spare. The stone groaned. A hairline fracture appeared in the masonry above Seraphine's head. Seraphine stiffened.
What are you doing? Testing a theory.
He added more mana. The crack widened. Dust began to sift down from the ceiling, coating her hair in fine gray powder. If fear generates mana, then a spike in fear should generate a surge. If I can trigger that surge, I can use it. Her eyes widened as another crack split across the stone above her feet. The sound was loud, like a gunshot in the small space.
To break my mind, you're no better than they were. I'm trying to keep us both alive.
He felt the drain on his core intensify, his integrity sliding down to 8%. The world around him blurred at the edges. If I don't get that surge, we die in here anyway. Do you want to die as a martyr? Or do you want to survive long enough to burn this place down? Seraphine stared at him. Her chest heaved.
You're crazy. Absolutely insane. Probably.
He poured more mana into the stone. The crack snapped open. A chunk of masonry the size of a fist tumbled down, landing inches from her shoulder. Seraphine gasped. Her eyes went wide, pupils dilating until her irises were mere rings of gold.
Stop. Make it stop. Look at me.
He didn't flinch as another chunk fell, this one larger. The dust was thick now, choking the air. Don't look away. Look at me. Seraphine turned her head. Her breath came in ragged, shallow gasps. She was trembling, not from cold, but from adrenaline flooding a system that had been dormant for too long.
You're killing us.
She choked out.
I'm waking you up.
He felt the first flicker of mana in his core. A spark.
It's working. The fear is generating power. Give me more.
How? She demanded. Her voice was... Min-jae Park lay face down on the cold black stone, the taste of damp earth and old blood thick in his mouth. Above him, every candle in the drowned crypt ignited simultaneously, their flames burning a sickly, violent violet against the gloom. The air vibrated with the low, dissonant hum of a coronation choir that seemed to originate from the bones of the ceiling itself. It pulsed in time with his heartbeat, a cold weight that felt less like jewelry and more like an anchor holding him to this hellish floor. Grindel Bricksnout stepped out from behind a pillar of black basalt, his large leathery ears twitching as he processed the sight of Min-jae's recovery. The goblin master mason wore a leather apron stained with mortar and soot, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terrifying recognition. He dropped to one knee, not in submission, but in a frantic, theatrical bow that sent dust swirling around his boots. "You're back," Grindel breathed, his voice raspy from disuse. Min-jae stared at the goblin, his mind racing to catch up with the physical reality of his resurrection. He could feel the cracks in his own spiritual integrity through the fused rosary, a cold, hollow ache where his soul should have been whole. It felt like a lie. The stone walls were cold, but they were breathing. By whom? Grindel looked up, his yellow eyes darting toward the ceiling as if afraid the choir might hear him speak truth. Min-jae swung his legs off the stone floor, wincing as the cold seeped into his knees. He didn't care about saints or kings right now. He cared about the system floating before his eyes, its blue text stark against the violet candlelight. It displayed a map of Cinderward above his left shoulder, a grid of red lines showing hundreds of tiny, flashing dots. Each dot was a laborer, forced into the cathedral's dangerous repairs, starving and dying by degrees.
The workers,
Pointing at the glowing map.
they're not just prisoners. They're fuel.
Grindel nodded slowly, his expression hardening. He stood up, wiping his hands on his apron, and began to pace, his boots clicking sharply on the stone. Fuel is easy to get if you know how to catch it. The basilica has traps left from the old days. Spike halls, crushing pits, acid pools. If we lure a few pilgrims down here, force them into the machinery, we can pull mana straight from their panic. It's clean, it's fast, and it'll keep us alive. Min-jae watched the goblin pace, his urban planner's mind instinctively mapping the geometry of the room. A spike hall, a crushing pit. The obvious dungeon strategy. It was efficient in a grotesque way, maximizing pain for maximum yield. But as he looked at the system map, seeing the red dots of the laborers in Cinder Ward, he saw something else. He saw infrastructure. He saw a network of pipes and channels that were dry and unused, waiting to be reclaimed.
No.
The word was quiet, but it cut through Grindel's pacing like a knife. Grindel stopped mid-step, his brows furrowing.
No? Boss, we have 12% core integrity. We don't have the luxury of morality. We need mana. Badly. I'm not going to build a slaughterhouse.
Standing up and brushing the dust from his robes, he walked toward the center of the room, where the stone floor gave way to a dark, gaping chasm that smelled of stagnant water. Panic generates emergency mana, yes. But it's volatile, unstable. It burns out your core faster than you can replenish it. Look at the map, Grindel. Look at Cinder Ward. Grindel glanced at the floating text, squinting. It shows starving people. It shows a city, Min-jae corrected. A city that needs water, a city that needs shelter. If we kill our resources, we die. If we feed them, we survive. The system wants mana? It'll get it from life, not death. He turned to face Grindel, his eyes locking onto the goblin's yellow ones. We're not building a spike hall, we're building an aqueduct from that abandoned sewage channel in the lower western quadrant. Use the old world planning instincts you claim to have, redirect the flow. Clean it. Bring it up. Grindel blinked, his mouth opening and closing as if he'd been struck.
The first floor defines the alignment.
His voice dropping to a gravelly tone. He pointed at the system interface, where a new construction option had just popped up, glowing with a soft, inviting light. If we build traps, we become predators. If we build a home, we become a sanctuary. Which one do you want to be? Grindel looked at the option labeled Rat S. Grindel, stared at the glowing text, his small hands trembling as they hovered over the interface. Rat Safe Aqueduct, he read aloud, his voice cracking. 80 mana? 6 labor units? 14 hours? He looked up, panic widening his yellow eyes. Boss, we don't have 80 mana. We barely have enough to keep our own hearts beating. If I spend that much on plumbing, what happens when the Basilica attacks? What happens when the Saint King's Inquisitors come down here to check on their harvest? Min-jae stepped closer to the goblin, placing a hand on Grindel's stony shoulder. The contact was solid, grounding.
Then we make it fast, and we make it beautiful. Grindel, look at me.
Grindel blinked, forcing his gaze up from the floor map.
Your people are hungry. They are cold. They are dying in the shadows while you try to build a meat grinder for yourself. That is not leadership. That is desperation. And desperation makes bad decisions.
He gestured toward the chasm below, where the stagnant water churned slowly. The aqueduct isn't just water. It's dignity. If we give them water, they stay. If they stay, they work. If they work, we get mana, not from their panic, but from their gratitude. From their labor. It is steady mana, clean mana. Grindel's jaw worked silently for a long moment. He looked down at his own hands, then at the rosary fused to Min-jae's chest. Clean mana, he muttered. You talk like a saint. I think like a mason. Then use your mason's mind, Min-jae urged. The sewage channel is already there. The pipes are old, but they are stone. Stone doesn't rot, you just need to clear the blockage. You just need to seal the leaks. Grindel let out a long, ragged breath. He straightened his apron, pulling it tight around his waist. 80 mana, he said again, testing the weight of the number. It's suicide if it fails. It is an investment, Min-jae corrected. Do you want to be the goblin who killed his first guest, or the goblin who fed him a warm bed and clean soup? Grindel grimaced. He pointed to the map again, where the red dots in Cinder Ward were flickering weaker, fading one by one. Every hour they spend starving is an hour they cannot work for the Saint King. Every hour they survive here is an hour they owe their lives to us. That is leverage. That is power. Grindel's eyes narrowed. He looked at the map, then back at Min-jae. Leverage, he repeated. He tapped his clawed finger against his chin. If we build this aqueduct, how do we get the labor units? We are 2. You have 12% core. I have 3 fingers on my left hand. Min-jae nodded toward the shadows of the ceiling, where 3 tiny glowing red eyes blinked in unison. 3 ember imps were perched on a stalactite above them, their small leathery wings folded tight against their bodies. They were hungry, and they were watching.
The imp. They are low-grade mana constructs, but they have strength relative to their size, and they are loyal. We will use them as labor, but they are chaotic. They need direction.
Grindel looked up at the imps. One of them dropped a piece of stalactite on his head. He swatted it away with a hiss.
Chaotic is an understatement. Those little devils ate my favorite chisel last week. For fun, then give them something they won't eat, waterproofing candles. Thick ones, tallow and wax. They love the smell, but they can't burn through it fast enough to ruin the seal if we guide their chewing.
He turned back to Grindel. We start tonight. I will calculate the flow rates. You direct the imps. We have 14 hours before the next shift change in Cinder Ward. If we are not ready by then, the St. King's overseers will notice the missing laborers and send a patrol. Grindel swallowed hard. He looked at the system prompt again, then at Min-jae. 14 hours, he said.
That leaves no margin for error. No margins in city planning. One mistake, and the whole structure collapses. Are you with me, Grindel?
The goblin looked at the rosary on Min-jae's chest, then at his own calloused hands. He took a deep breath, puffing out his chest. I am a master mason, boss. I do not build traps, I build foundations. He turned to the ceiling and raised his voice. Hey, you little bastards down there. The 3 ember imps chittered in response, leaning forward on the stalactite.
Get down here, and don't touch.
Grindel's voice cracked as he finished the sentence, his claws flexing in the air before he snatched up a jagged piece of obsidian from the floor. Touch nothing but the stone you are given. He bellowed at the ceiling, his throat working to keep the command steady. The 3 ember imps tumbled through the darkness, landing on the wet stone with soft thuds. Their eyes glowed like hot coals in the violet gloom, and their mouths hung open, saliva dripping from fangs that were too sharp for their small heads. They chittered, a sound like dry leaves skittering over pavement, and immediately began to sniff the air around Grindel's waist.
Do not eat the tools.
His voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. He stepped between the imps and Grindel, holding out a hand. The smallest imp, no bigger than a rat, lunged for his fingers. Min-jae did not flinch. He held the hand steady until the creature's snout touched his skin, feeling the heat radiating from its tiny body. These are for sealing the cracks. If you eat them, the water leaks. If the water leaks, the floor floods. If the floor floods, we drown. The imp paused, tilting its head. It let out a low growl, then turned to nudge Grindel's leg. Grindel stepped back, rubbing his ankle.
It knows what you mean, boss. They are stupid. But they are not blind. What do we do first? We clear the main intake.
He pointed to a massive iron grate half buried in the rubble near the chasm's edge. It was rusted shut, caked with decades of grime and calcified mineral deposits. That gate blocks the old sewer line. We need to move it. Grindel sighed, rolling his shoulders.
80 tons of iron. Against 3 imps and a goblin with a chisel. You want me to lift it? No. You want to leverage it. Look at the base. The stone has shifted. There is a fulcrum point here.
He dropped to one knee, brushing away dust to reveal a hairline fracture in the foundation stone beneath the grate. Put the chisel there. Wedge it. Then I will push from the other side. We don't lift it all at once. We tilt it just enough to let the first flow through, just enough to wake the system. Grindel looked at the chisel, then at the grate. He spat on his hands and rubbed them together.
I am not a mason. I am a planner. And I do not slip.
He placed his shoulder against the cold, rusted metal. It smelled of blood and old rain. On my count. 3, 2, 1, push. Grindel drove the chisel into the crack and threw his weight against the handle. The stone groaned, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated in Min-jae's teeth. Dust rained down from the ceiling.
Harder.
His boots slid on the wet stone. He gritted his teeth, his muscles bulging under his apron. It is stuck. The roots have grown through the mortar. Min-jae leaned forward, putting every ounce of his remaining strength into the push. He felt the strain in his back, the fire in his lungs. The imps, he gasped. Grindel, tell them to burn the roots. Small flames. Careful. The goblin turned, his face red with exertion. Hey, you little fire starters, he yelled over the grinding metal. On my mark, burn the gray worms. But only the ones touching the iron. If you melt the wax, I will eat you. One of the imps screeched in delight and leaped onto the grate. It bit into a thick, black root that had fused with the metal, igniting it with a burst of orange flame. The heat hit Min-jae's face, dry and intense. The root withered and snapped.
Now.
Min-jae shoved. The grate shrieked, tearing free from its moorings. It clattered sideways, revealing a dark, square opening beyond it. A gust of stale, but moving air rushed out, carrying the faint scent of clean earth. We did it, Grindel panted, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked into the hole. Is there water? Min-jae crawled forward, peering into the darkness. He could hear a trickle, then a rush. Water. Clear, fast-moving water. It is flowing, he said, relief washing over him.
But it is too fast. It will erode the walls before we can line them. We need a diffuser.
His eyes lighting up. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring his sore muscles.
Stone blocks. Stack them in a pyramid shape inside the pipe. Slow the flow. Create pressure. How many?
Min-jae asked.
20, maybe 30. We will need the imps to carry them. They can't carry stone.
Min-jae said.
But they can burn it. They can melt the edges, fuse them together.
Grindel froze. One of the creatures leaped onto Min-jae's shoulder, its hot breath fanning his neck.
Wait.
He held up a hand.
If we fuse them with fire, we lose the structural integrity. We need stone that holds together under pressure, not glass.
Grindel rubbed his chin, watching the imps tumble in the violet light. Stone melts if they bite it too long, but wax hardens. If we coat the blocks in layers of waterproofing tallow, then use their fire to set the surface, we get a seal that is both solid and smooth. Min-jae nodded slowly. It was inefficient, messy, and relied on the unpredictable aggression of his labor force, but it was workable. Do it, he said, but you direct them. I will calculate the gradient. Grindel clapped his hands, a sharp sound in the damp air. All right, you little devils, he shouted. New game. Find the wax candles, eat the ends, bring me the sticky bits. If you finish first, you get to chew on the chisel handle for 5 minutes. No more, no less. The ember imps screeched in delight and scattered toward the supplies Min-jae had ordered delivered from the black market. Grindel turned to Min-jae, his grin wide and predatory.
They are efficient when bribed. But boss, this is taking time. We have 12 hours left. The Cinder Ward shift change is coming. If we do not have a trap ready, the overseers will wonder where our labor units went. We are building a sanctuary.
He unrolled his blueprint on the wet stone, smoothing it out with a calloused finger. Not a trap house. A trap house dies when the victims stop coming. A sanctuary endures. Look at this map of Cinder Ward. It showed the intricate network of streets and alleys above them. Hundreds of red dots pulsed in the lower wards.
Hundreds of laborers, forced into dangerous repairs by the Saint King's overseers. They are hungry, they are cold, and they are being worked to death.
Grindel frowned. He leaned over the map, his eyes scanning the red dots.
So, we can pick them off one by one. Easy manna. No risk. No, we pull them in together. We offer safety, not as bait, but as an exit.
Grindel stared at him.
Then make us stronger than their fear.
He traced the line of the aqueduct he had designed.
We use the sewage channel. It is abandoned, deep, and ignored by the overseers. We clear it out. We line it with fungus beds to purify the water. We build a concealed warming room at the base. We make it warm. We make it safe. And we send a whisper up through the vents. A whisper? To anyone listening, To the ones who are tired of dying for the Saint King's vanity. To the ones who just want to survive the night.
Grindel was silent for a long moment. He looked at the aqueduct plans, then at the imps, who were now returning with mouths full of wax-dripping candles. He looked at Min-jae's chest, where the cracked obsidian rosary pulsed with a faint, dying light.
No traps, no screaming? Boss, that is not a proper first floor.
Min-jae met his gaze. There was no hesitation in his eyes, only the cold, hard clarity of a man who had spent his life building cities for the rich and watching them fail the poor. Then we build something better than a proper dungeon. Grindel exhaled, a long, slow breath that fogged in the cold air. He looked at the imps, then at the grate, then back to Min-jae. He shrugged, a theatrical gesture that seemed to shake off his doubts.
Fine, but if they come and eat my chisel before I get paid, I am blaming you.
He turned to the imps. Hey, stop drooling on the stone. Bring those candles to the wall. We are lining the channel. The imps chittered and obeyed, their small bodies moving with surprising speed. Min-jae watched them work, his mind racing through the calculations. The flow rate of the sewage channel was high. He needed to divide it, create eddies. Slow the water down enough to allow for filtration. It was a problem he had solved 1,000 times in his old life, but now the stakes were real. If he failed, not only would he die, but hundreds of lives above ground would remain trapped in a cycle of exploitation and death.
We need more than stone.
He looked up at the ceiling, where the shadows seemed to shift. We need light. Real light, not this violet hell. Grindel paused, a candle held halfway to his mouth. Light? Where do we get light? The Saint King's lamps. Min-jae Park lay face down on the cold black stone, the taste of ancient dust and ozone thick in his throat. Above him, through layers of packed earth and forgotten masonry, a coronation choir vibrated with a terrifying synthetic resonance that rattled his teeth. He pushed himself up, his hands sliding over wet obsidian, and gasped as every candle in the drowned crypt ignited simultaneously with a violent violet flame. The light did not warm, it chilled. Grindel stood at the edge of the pool, his grotesque form silhouetted against the glowing water. You are awake, Grindel rumbled, stepping closer. The core recognizes its master. Min-jae looked down at his chest. Fused to his sternum was a cracked obsidian rosary, pulsing with a faint, rhythmic heartbeat that matched his own terror. And he was dying.
Don't mistake my survival for health.
Pushing to his feet. His legs trembled, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of the reality settling in. Explain. Grindel gestured with a clawed hand toward the walls. The basilica was sealed after its rulers rebelled against the first Saint King. They thought they could hide the truth of the harvest. They were wrong. You are the failure that succeeded, Core Lord Morrow. But look at your core. Min-jae closed his eyes. The system, which he had ignored until now, forced its interface into his vision, cold and unyielding. Core integrity, 12%. Dying is not metaphorical. Stone shards began to flake from the ceiling, falling around him like snow. He swatted one away before it struck his face.
I need this place functional.
His voice steady despite the shaking in his hands.
Not just for me. For whoever survives what's coming.
The basilica does not function for ghosts, it functions for sacrifice, or for blood.
Min-jae ignored him, turning toward the maintenance tunnels that led up into the city's underbelly. He needed answers, and he needed power. But first, he needed to know if anyone else was left in this rotting world. The maintenance tunnel smelled of stale water and panic. Min-jae moved with a precision born of his old life, checking structural integrity before committing his weight. Beside him, Seraphine Vale walked with the tense grace of a coiled spring, her hands constantly adjusting the invisible bindings that no longer held her prisoner's collar.
Sister Illyra sent them.
Seraphine said abruptly as they reached a junction where the water level was ankle-deep and rising. 3 children. They crawled out of the lower grate an hour ago. Min-jae stopped. Children? Starving, Seraphine confirmed, her eyes narrowing in suspicion. It flared violet in response.
And it doesn't care about their safety. Why would Illyra risk this? Because she knows what you are, or what you were. She believes you can break the cycle. But be careful, Morrow. This could be an Inquisition test. They want to see if the core lord is real, or just a man playing at God.
Min-jae crouched by the grate, peering into the darkness below. He heard faint coughing, the ragged breath of illness. Illyra isn't stupid enough to send children into a trap she didn't set up herself. If this is a test, it's one we didn't agree to. He grabbed the grate and heaved. It groaned, rusted hinges screaming, then gave way with a clatter. He dropped down into the darkness, Seraphine following close behind. In the small alcove beneath the tunnel floor, 3 huddled forms lay against the wall. They were too thin, their ribs visible through patchwork coats. Min-jae reached out, touching one child's forehead. The skin was burning hot. Fever. Severe dehydration.
They're sick.
Pulling his hand back as if burned.
If we keep them here, they'll die. We need to move them to the Ember Refuge. Now. The Ember Refuge?
Stepping back,
It's dry.
Min-jae said firmly.
And it has stone walls that don't leak. It's the only place with heat left in this structure.
He whistled sharply, a sound he hadn't realized he could make until now. 3 small imps, no larger than rats but made of shifting coal and smoke, materialized from the shadows.
Take them, gently. If you scorch them, I'll flay you.
As they floated toward the tunnel leading to the Ember Refuge, Min-jae turned to Seraphine. Their arrival just changed everything. Look at your core sense. Do you feel it? The air around Min-jae shimmered, a low hum vibrating in his teeth as the system's voice cut through the damp silence of the tunnel. Sanctuary mana generation unlocked. The number at the edge of his vision ticked upward, not with the jagged spike of violence he had tasted earlier, but with a steady, rhythmic pulse. It was stable. Real.
It's true.
Staring at his hands, they were solid, no longer translucent. The basilica feeds on them, not their blood, their presence. Seraphine stared at the retreating figures of the imps carrying the children, her face pale in the violet light. Voluntary residence, she said, testing the words as if they were poison.
You haven't just survived this place, Morrow. You've tamed it. I haven't tamed anything yet.
Turning away before she could see the relief flooding his veins. The imps are moving them to the Ember Refuge. Illyra sent 3 starving kids because a bread riot broke out above ground. That means the city is already fracturing. If the Inquisition starts looking for reasons to purge the lower districts, they'll start digging down here. And what will you do? Seraphine stepped into his path, forcing him to stop.
Play savior. You don't have the mana for a war. You have enough to keep your heart beating for another hour, maybe 2. I have enough to open the gates.
He pointed toward the tunnel behind them, where the distant sound of shuffling feet echoed against the stone.
Illyra isn't just sending one group.
She's sending everyone she can hide. If we turn them away, we lose the sanctuary status. If we keep this place dark and empty, it dies.
I need to know who's coming next. Illyra is running the Understreet Compact.
Her voice dropping.
She's blind, but she sees more than anyone in the cathedral above. She doesn't trust the Inquisition, and she definitely doesn't trust you.
I'm not asking for her trust. I'm asking for your eyes. You were an Inquisitor. You know how they tag people who disappear. I need to know if what's coming is safe.
The shadows at the end of the tunnel shifted. A figure emerged, hunched and trembling, followed by 2 others leaning heavily on each other. It was Sister Illyra Fen, her blind eyes wide and unseeing, her hands outstretched like she was navigating a minefield in total darkness. Behind her, a sewer worker dragged a 4th child, one who was barely conscious.
Illyra.
Stepping forward.
You brought more. They were not running from monsters.
Her voice soft, but carrying clearly over the dripping water. Her head tilted toward the ceiling, listening to the muffled chaos above. They were running from priests. Seraphine stiffened, her hand going to the hilt of a dagger that wasn't there. Priests? The ones who wear the white masks, Illyra continued, ignoring Seraphine's tension. She took a step forward, her bare feet slapping against the wet stone. They take people away from medical screenings. People who complain about the bread. People who ask where the tithe goes. They come in through the eastern archway. They never come out. Min-jae frowned.
Medical screenings? The Inquisition doesn't do screenings. They do executions. That's what they say they do.
She reached out, her fingers brushing Min-jae's arm. He didn't pull away. Look at the worker dragging the child. Look closely. Min-jae turned to the sewer worker. The man was gaunt, his skin gray and slick with sweat, but it was his shoulder that caught Min-jae's eye. There, burned into the flesh of his deltoid, was a mark. It looked like a sunburst, but the rays were jagged, irregular.
What is that?
Her voice hardening. She leaned in, squinting in the violet gloom. Her expression shifted from suspicion to recognition, then to horror. That's an old seal, she said quietly. Pre-rebellion. An Inquisition inventory tag. Inventory? Min-jae echoed. The word felt wrong. People weren't inventory.
They don't just kill them, they collect them. The mark is how they track their livestock.
When the sun rises and the choir sings, those marked are processed. That's why I sent the children here. They have no marks yet.
But the worker does. He was taken last week, returned with that burn.
Seraphine looked at the sewer worker, then back to Min-jae. If they're tagging people before they vanish, they're preparing a purge, a large one. And if this place generates mana from residents, she trailed off, her eyes widening. They'll come for you, not to arrest you, to harvest you. Min-jae looked at the sun-shaped burn on the worker's shoulder. The system pinged again, a cold, sharp notification that made his skin crawl.
How many more do you have? Enough to fill the crypts if you...
Min-jae stared at the pulsing mark on the worker's shoulder, then up at Sister Alira's blind face. The implication hung heavy in the damp air, thicker than the mold spores drifting from the walls. Harvest, livestock. He had spent his life building infrastructure that moved people efficiently, but this was a different kind of logistics. One, designed to strip them of their humanity before the end.
What happens to the ones with the mark?
Min-jae asked.
Do they die immediately? No.
Her hands trembling as she clutched her rosary beads.
They live for a while, they become quieter. Obedient. The priests say it is a blessing of purification, but those who survive the process, they are never the same. And those who do not survive?
She shook her head slowly. They feed the core in ways we cannot comprehend. That is why the basilica breathes Moro. It does not just rest on stone, it feeds on them. Seraphine stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she examined the burn mark again. The Inquisition has been using the harvest mark to select victims for centuries, she said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. I thought it was a myth, a way to terrify the lower districts into compliance. If this is real, then the Saint King's reign wasn't just political oppression. It was agricultural. Agricultural? Min-jae frowned. You mean they're farming people? Mana, Seraphine corrected sharply. Fear generates emergency mana, pain stabilizes it. The basilica needs both to function, and the Inquisition provides the input. They don't just kill for power, they cultivate it like crops in a field. Min-jae felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature of the tunnel. He looked at the three children being guided by the imps toward the Ember Refuge, then back to the terrified sewer worker. If the basilica was indeed feeding on the harvested, then his decision to open the gates wasn't just an act of charity. It was a direct challenge to the entire economic model of the Inquisition.
If they know I'm here, if they know this place generates mana from voluntary residence instead of forced sacrifice,
Then you are no longer a relic, Seraphine finished for him. You are a competitor. And the Inquisition does not tolerate competition. Alira reached out, her hand finding Min-jae's arm again. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Then you must hide it, she whispered. Hide the fact that they are alive. Hide the mana. If they detect stable growth, they will send the harvester squads. They will tear this place apart brick by stone until nothing is left. Min-jae looked at the system interface hovering in his peripheral vision. Sanctuary mana generation unlocked. The number was still ticking up, slow and steady. He could feel the power flowing through him, warm and inviting. It would be so easy to let it flow unchecked, to build a fortress of light that blazed for all to see.
but if I hide it,
The people inside won't know they're safe. They'll keep living in fear. better fear than death.
though her voice lacked its usual conviction. She looked at the children disappearing into the shadows of the refuge tunnel. We have a choice, Morrow. We can be open and vulnerable, or closed and secure. But we cannot be both. Min-jae closed his eyes, listening to the distant hum of the basilica. He thought about the city above, the bread riots, the starving children. He thought about his old life as an urban planner, designing public spaces that were supposed to serve everyone, but ended up serving only the wealthy. This time, he wouldn't design for show, he would design for survival.
Seraphine,
Opening his eyes,
How do we mask mana signatures?
she blinked, surprised by the question. We don't. Not entirely. But we can dilute it. Mix it with ambient noise. Chaos. If enough people are terrified, their individual fear mana blends into the background static. The harvester squads won't be able to distinguish your sanctuary's output from the city's general despair. Min-jae nodded. It was a grim solution, but it made sense. He wouldn't stop the fear. He would use it as camouflage. Illyra, he said, turning to the blind healer.
You said there are enough people to fill the crypts. Can we move them in? Quickly?
Illyra hesitated, her head tilting as if listening to a voice only she could hear.
there is a group waiting at the lower junction. 20 souls, mostly elderly and injured. They cannot walk far. Take them.
The imps can carry the ones who can't walk. Use every tunnel, every vent, every crack you can find. Do not let them gather in one place. Scatter them. If they cluster too tightly, the mana spike might be detectable. What about the worker?
Seraphine asked, gesturing to the man still dragging his leg.
He has the mark. He'll bring attention if he stays.
Min-jae looked at the sewer worker. The man's eyes were glassy with pain and exhaustion, but there was a flicker of hope in them as he looked at Min-jae. He was still afraid, yes, but he was alive. That mattered more than the mark for now.
Min-jae stepped past the sewer worker, his boots splashing softly in the dark water. He moved toward the tunnel mouth where Seraphine was checking the structural integrity of the archway with a length of rusted chain.
We can't leave him exposed, Min-jae said. But we can't keep him either. He will die before he reaches the refuge, Seraphine replied, not looking up from her work. His leg is broken, and the mark is burning his nerves. If you bring him in, the Inquisition might trace the surge of pain mana to this exact coordinate. They listen for agony like hounds track blood. Let them listen, Min-jae said. I'm not hiding anymore. Not completely. Seraphine stopped her work and turned to face him, her eyes gleaming in the violet light. You are reckless. That is why you survived execution, and that is why you might die by your own hand. Help me get him inside, Min-jae insisted. The imps can carry the heavy ones. We need every bit of life we can get, even if it's dangerous. Seraphine sighed, a sharp, frustrated exhale. She dropped the chain and walked over to the sewer worker. She knelt beside him, her hands hovering over the man's shoulder before she firmly gripped his arm. Hold still, she commanded the worker. Then, louder, to Min-jae. If we do this, we lose the element of surprise. We become visible. Visibility is better than invisibility if it means someone gets help, Min-jae said. Move. The imps scurried forward, their small, clawed hands gripping the worker's limbs. With a collective grunt of effort that sounded like tearing parchment, they lifted him into the air. The worker whimpered, a low, broken sound, but did not resist. Illyra moved to Min-jae's side. She reached out, her blind eyes fixed on nothing, yet perfectly aligned with his face. You are changing, Morrow? She said softly. Is there? Illyra asked. Or are you just becoming what the Basilica needs you to be? A core lord who rules through fear as much as mercy. Min-jae stiffened. The accusation stung because it felt true. He had seen Seraphine's logic about masking the mana signature with chaos. It was efficient. It was safe. And it relied on the suffering of others. It is a tool, Min-jae said, his voice tight. Not a philosophy. Tools cut both ways, Illyra warned. She turned her head toward the tunnel where the children had disappeared. Those 3 are safe for now. But the rest, the 20 you mentioned? They are waiting at the lower junction. If you bring them in, you will cross a threshold. There is no going back to being just a survivor. Seraphine stood up, brushing dust from her knees. She looked at the worker being carried away by the imps, then back at Min-jae. Then lead them in, she said, but keep your head down. The Inquisition has ears everywhere, even in the stone. I will watch the sensors, Min-jae said. I'll monitor the mana output. If it spikes, I'll dampen it manually. And if they send a squad? Seraphine asked. Her hand drifted to the hilt of her dagger. What then? You have no weapons. I have a dagger. Illyra has prayers. I have the basilica, Min-jae said. He placed his hand on the cold stone wall. He could feel the hum beneath his palm, the deep, resonant thrum of the core. It was angry. Or perhaps just hungry. And I have the truth. Truth doesn't stop steel, Seraphine muttered. But she didn't argue further. She turned to Illyra. Go to the junction. Guide them in. Keep them quiet. If anyone cries out, you shut their mouth. Understood? Illyra nodded slowly. Understood. She moved past them, her robe whispering against the wet floor. Min-jae watched her go, then looked at Seraphine. She drew her dagger, the blade catching the violet light of the candles. Someone has to make sure you don't trip over your own idealism. And if those inquisitors come, I'd like to see them try to harvest a core lord who knows how to kill. Min-jae managed a faint smile. Try not to enjoy it too much. Impossible, Seraphine said dryly. She moved toward the shadows of the main hall, her movements silent and predatory. Go, bring your people. I'll hold the line. Min-jae turned back to the tunnel entrance. He could hear the faint sounds of movement from deeper in the tunnels, whispers, shuffling feet, the occasional cough. The 20 were waiting. They were terrified, they were hungry, and they were hopeful. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the damp metallic air of the basilica. Then he stepped into the darkness to meet them. Min-jae walked deeper into the gloom, his boots splashing through the shallow filth that pooled around the stone drains. The air grew colder, thick with the scent of stagnant water and old decay. He reached the junction where Illyra stood waiting, her white robe stark against the black basalt walls. Beside her, 3 small figures huddled together, their ribs visible through tattered rags, their skin pale and slick with sweat.
They are burning up.
Kneeling beside the nearest child. The boy's eyes were half closed, his breathing ragged. The bread riot turned violent above, Illyra explained, her voice soft but carrying a sharp edge of urgency. They ran for their lives. Not from monsters. From the priests who had been watching them. Seraphine appeared at Min-jae's shoulder, her dagger drawn, her eyes scanning the tunnel mouth. This is an Inquisition test, she said, her voice tight.
They let them in to see if we will take them. To see if we are vulnerable. Look at them.
His patience fraying.
Do you think I care about your tests? These children are dying. If they stay out there, they die. If they come in, we might survive. That is the only variable that matters right now.
I am not arguing with your heart, Seraphine countered, sheathing her dagger but keeping her hand near the hilt.
I am reminding you that every soul we bring in is a beacon, a visible, breathing beacon. If the Inquisition traces their mana, they will be here before dawn. They have no mana to trace.
He looked at the children, then at Illyra.
Send them to the Ember Refuge now. Use the imps to carry them if they cannot walk. We need stable residents. We need proof that this place can heal, not just kill.
Illyra nodded, her blind eyes fixed on Min-jae's face. She reached out, placing a hand on the shoulder of the boy who was closest to collapse. Come with me, she said softly. The children stirred, their fear palpable, but they moved toward her voice like moths to a flame. As they disappeared into the side tunnel, one of the older boys, a girl with matted hair, stopped and looked back at Min-jae. She pointed a trembling finger at the sewer worker who had been dragged in earlier, now resting against a pillar. Min-jae Park lay face down on the cold black stone of the drowned first floor, his forehead pressed against obsidian that smelled of ozone and old blood. Above him, Through layers of collapsed masonry and sealed grates, the vibration of a coronation choir thrummed in his teeth, a hollow, ceremonial resonance that felt like an insult to the silence he had fought for. Every candle in the crypt ignited simultaneously, their flames shifting from orange to a violent, unnatural violet that cast long, jagged shadows against the curved walls. The light did not warm him. It only highlighted the crack in his chest, where the obsidian rosary had fused itself into his sternum, its stones pulsing with a rhythm that matched the failing beat of his heart. Grindel Bricksnout stepped out from behind a pillar, his massive goblin hands twitching at his sides. He wore a leather apron stained with wet mortar and looked down at Min-jae with a mixture of awe and terrified deference. "Lord," Grindel breathed, the word cracking in his throat. "The stone, it sang for you." When the violet light hit the rosary, the whole floor shuddered. "Do you feel it? The core is waking." Min-jae pushed himself up, his limbs screaming with the protest of atrophied muscle and broken bones. He grabbed a jagged piece of rubble to leverage himself upright, his vision swimming with static.
I don't have time for songs, Grindel. Check the integrity. Is the seal holding, or did the choir break through? The seal is intact, core Lord Morrow.
Gesturing wildly at the walls.
But above us.
The Cinder Ward. The bread riot started an hour ago. The Inquisition has mobilized. They are looking for sources of instability, for unauthorized mana channels.
They found traces of clean water flowing from the sewer grates near the market square. Vare is here.
At the name, Min-jae froze. His fingers dug into the stone floor, knuckles white.
He transferred himself.
His voice dropping to a whisper.
He knew something was happening here. He's not just investigating a riot, Lord. He's hunting a ghost, and he brought Ash Knights, heavy infantry. They're searching every drain, every vent. If they find the aqueducts, if they see the sanctuary.
Min-jae closed his eyes. The system interface flickered in his mind's eye, cold and indifferent, displaying metrics that meant nothing to a man who had just returned from death, but everything to a strategist trying to save lives. Divine Hunter detected, Lord Vare Sable, threat assessment, C rank, direct combat survival probability, 3%.
3%.
Opening his eyes to look at Grindel.
I can't fight him. Not yet. My core is 12% integrity. If I engage, I die. And if I die, the Basilica falls. We can lock the tunnels.
Slamming a fist into his palm.
I have movable walls in the maintenance sector. We can seal them off completely. Starve him out. Make him think there's nothing here but rats and rot.
Min-jae shook his head. Vare doesn't give up on ghosts. He digs, and if he breaks through, he'll burn the ward to find what he thinks is a demon. We can't hide anymore, Grindel. But we can't let him see us either. The violet light pulsed again, brighter this time, and Min-jae felt a sharp pain in his chest as the rosary tightened its grip. He stumbled toward the central chamber, where Seraphine Vale stood waiting, her arms crossed over her chest, her face pale but composed. She wore the tattered remnants of her former robes, now repurposed as practical clothing for survival, but her posture remained rigidly upright, disciplined and wary. He's investigating the water supply. He's going to follow it down. If he finds the aqueducts, he'll know a sanctuary exists. The system has flagged him as a divine hunter. I cannot defeat him in combat. Seraphine turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing as she processed the information.
Then we deny him access. But you are not suggesting we flee. You are suggesting we let him find us, but on our terms. I'm suggesting we change the map.
Walking past her to a control panel etched into the wall, powered by the ambient mana of the Basilica. Vare knows this building's history better than anyone. He knows where the old secrets are buried. If he follows the water, he'll find the primary sump. We need to route him elsewhere. Into a dead end. Or better, into a loop. Grindel scratched his head with a clawed finger.
A loop. Like the trap tunnels in the lower dungeons? Exactly.
His mind racing, connecting infrastructure nodes that hadn't been linked since the rebellion. If we reverse the flow in sectors 4 through 9 and unlock the secondary maintenance grates, we can create a shifting corridor. A labyrinth that moves while he's walking it. He'll chase the water, but the water will lead him away from the sanctuary entrance. Seraphine stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Min-jae's hands as they moved across the runestone interface. You are using my old prison's Seraphine veil stared at the runestone interface, her fingers hovering inches from the glowing carvings without touching them. You are using my old prison layout as a template, she said, her voice sharp with recognition. The blind spots in the eastern wing were designed to trap fugitives who knew the Inquisition's patrol routes. If you reverse the flow, you aren't just hiding us, you're weaponizing the architecture. Min-jae Park did not look up from the panel. His hands moved across the stone, activating glyphs that had been dormant for centuries. I'm not trying to trap him, Seraphine. I'm trying to make him walk in circles until his Ash Knights exhaust their mana reserves. Ver is precise. He'll trust his instruments over his instincts. If we manipulate the acoustic resonance of the tunnels, he'll believe the water source is deeper than it actually is. Grindel Bricksnout clapped his massive hands together, the sound echoing like a gavel strike in the damp chamber. And I have the movable walls ready to slide into place behind you. When Lord Ver reaches the junction, the corridor will snap shut behind him and open ahead of him. He'll never know which way is up until he hits the dead end. Min-jae paused, his fingers resting on a central lever that felt cold enough to burn. It's not just a blind alley, Grindel. It's a loop, a maintenance route that cycles back toward the Cinder Ward's surface grates. If I time it right, Ver will emerge in the market district, convinced he has lost the trail. But if I misjudge the timing? Then we drown him, Seraphine finished, her eyes hardening. Or he drowns us. Min-jae exhaled slowly, his breath fogging in the chill air of the crypt.
No drowning. That's what he expects. He expects a monster to fight back with force. I need him to walk away thinking he won. I need him to believe the sanctuary is empty. Stone remembers every hand that touches it.
More to himself than to them.
Ver built this building's security grid. He knows where the bones are buried. If we leave a trace, he'll follow it forever.
Seraphine stepped closer, her shadow falling over Min-jae's work.
Then leave nothing. But if you reroute the primary aqueduct, the pressure in the lower cisterns will spike. The basilica's foundation is older than the Inquisition. It can't handle sudden shifts in hydraulic load without cracking. I know.
His voice tight.
That's why we're using the secondary sump. It's dry, but it's reinforced with obsidian. If we channel the overflow there, we divert the pressure. But it requires Seraphine's knowledge of Inquisition rites to bypass the wards.
Seraphine frowned, her arms crossing over her chest.
Why me? I'm a prisoner. A ghost in your walls. Because you wrote the codes.
Finally looking up at her.
You designed the seal protocols. The system recognizes your biometric signature as an administrator. I can bypass the locks, but I can't authenticate the overflow valve without your key. It's either you, or we let Ver find the sanctuary.
Seraphine's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in her cheek. She looked at Grindel, then back to Min-jae.
And if I refuse, if I decide it's better for Cinder Ward to burn than to help a core lord cheat death, then you're no better than the Saint Kings. You preached order because you believed fear kept people safe. But look at us, Seraphine. We're hiding in a grave because your order failed. I'm not asking for your loyalty. I'm asking for your expertise.
Grindel shifted his weight, looking between them. Lord Ver is 3 levels up right now. His Ash Knights are probing the drain grates near the bakery district. They're close. If we don't start the sequence now, they'll find the primary vent before we can shift it. Min-jae turned back to the panel. Then stop talking and give me the code. Seraphine hesitated, her hand hovering over her own chest where a faint scar marked the place where her soul had been nearly crushed. You want my code, she said, her voice flat.
Do you know what happens when I use it? The Inquisition flags any unauthorized admin access as a Class 1 heresy. If the system records my signature being used here, Ver will know I'm alive. I don't care about the flag.
His eyes locked on the glowing runes.
I care about keeping you out of his cage. That's not your decision to make. My life is my own. If you use me as a tool again, I will dismantle this sanctuary from the inside out. Do you understand?
Min-jae held her gaze for a long moment, the violet light reflecting in his eyes. I understand. But if Ver finds the aqueducts, he won't just cage you. He'll execute every refugee we've brought here. So are you going to give me the code? Or should I call off the sequence and let them walk into our home? Seraphine's face went pale. She closed her eyes for a second, then opened them, her expression resolving into cold resolve.
The code is Athel.
The code is Athelgard Null, Seraphine said, her voice devoid of any warmth or triumph. She stepped back from the console, her hands shaking slightly as she retreated to the edge of the platform. It disables the biometric lock for 10 minutes. If you don't shift the flow by then, the wards will re-engage and seal us in permanently. Min-jae didn't hesitate. He slammed his palm onto the central rune, chanting the syllable with a precision that felt less like magic and more like engineering. The stone beneath his feet shuddered, groaning under the sudden strain of hydraulic force being redirected from centuries of stagnation into active, violent motion.
Grindel, now.
Not turning around.
The walls, slide them.
Grindel Bricksnout let out a guttural shout of effort, throwing his weight against a series of iron levers embedded in the damp earth wall behind him. The ground lurched. Thick slabs of obsidian and granite ground against each other, sparks flying as ancient lubricants gave way to modern desperation. A low, grinding rumble shook the dust from the ceiling, settling over them like snow. Its holding, Grindel panted, wiping slime from his brow.
The loop is forming. But Min-jae, the pressure, it's too high for the secondary sump. The mortar isn't cured yet. Use the Ash Knight's confusion.
His eyes darting between the glowing runestone interface and the schematic projected in his mind. Ver will be looking for clean water. He'll be tracing the flow upward. If we invert the sump's output, we create a false source. A mirage of purity that pulls him away from our entrance. Seraphine watched the readouts climb, her face pale. You're flooding the lower maintenance shafts. That's where the foundation piles are. If you destabilize the load distribution, the basilica could sink into the bedrock. I'm not flooding them, Min-jae corrected, his fingers flying across the glyphs.
I'm diverting the overflow into the old Inquisition drainage channels. They're lined with lead and salt. They'll carry the excess mana away without triggering a structural collapse, but it requires manual override at Junction 4. Junction 4 is in the dark zone.
Her eyes widening.
It's been dry for 50 years. The air down there is toxic to anyone without a filter.
I'm rerouting the control logic through the acoustic dampeners. If I can synchronize the vibration frequency of the pipes with the natural resonance of the stone, I can trick the system into thinking the junction is sealed. Trick the system.
Scratching his chin with a claw.
That's not how magic works, boss. You don't just lie to the core. It knows when you're lying.
It operates on cause and effect. If I provide a plausible cause, a pressure drop in Sector 9, and a verifiable effect, a closure of Junction 4, it will accept the narrative. I just need to make the lie loud enough to drown out the truth. Seraphine stepped closer to the console, her shadow falling over Min-jae's shoulders.
And if you're wrong, if the system rejects the input, then we die. But if I'm right, Ver chases a ghost while our refugees breathe.
A sudden clanging echoed from above, muffled by layers of stone and earth. The sound was rhythmic, methodical. Ash Knights. Searching.
He's close.
His ears twitching toward the ceiling.
I can feel the vibration in my teeth.
Min-jae ignored the noise, focusing entirely on the interface. Sweat dripped from his nose onto the stone, sizzling as it hit the hot runes. The system flashed a warning, threat assessment, C rank. The text was red, pulsing with urgency. The system doesn't trust you to survive if he finds you. I don't need it to trust me. Min-jae gritted out, twisting a final lever with both hands. I just need it to believe the story. He pulled the lever down hard. The sound of rushing water roared through the walls, a thunderous rush that drowned out the clanging above. The lights in the chamber flickered, then stabilized, shifting from violet to a steady, cool blue.
It's done.
Slumping against the console, his chest heaving.
The loop is active. Ver will follow the water into the maintenance tunnels. By the time he realizes there's no source, he'll be lost in the shifting corridor.
Grindel peered out a narrow grate in the wall, looking up toward the surface. I see them, he hissed. She walked to the far wall, running her fingers along the rough-hewn stone. You've bought us time, Core Lord, but you haven't solved the problem. Ver will send more, and next time he won't be looking for water. Min-jae wiped the sweat from his eyes, leaving a smear of grime across his forehead. He didn't look up from the console,
Then we make sure there's nothing for him to find.
turning back from the grate. The goblin's eyes were wide, pupils dilated in the dim light. But digging takes time, and noise. If we can make the noise, he pointed a trembling finger at the gauge where the pressure needle was vibrating dangerously close to the red zone. The loop holds the water, but it doesn't hide it. Ver's knights have sensors. They'll detect the moisture in the air before they see the tunnel. Seraphine stepped forward, her boots clicking sharply on the stone floor. She moved with the predatory grace of someone who had hunted men like Min-jae for years.
If you change the baseline, they fail. The Basilica's ancient infrastructure is calibrated to the Saint King's ley lines. Ver's Inquisition gear is calibrated to the current era's mana density. They don't speak the same language, so we change the language.
He turned to the main interface, his hands hovering over the complex array of levers and runestones. Grindel, I need you to reinforce the secondary vent. Use the movable walls, not just to block it, but to curve it. Create a resonance chamber. A resonance chamber? Grindel frowned, scratching his snout with a claw. What for? To amplify the sound? She looked at Min-jae with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant respect. If you curve the stone correctly, the airflow will create a harmonic frequency that interferes with magnetic sensors. It's a blind spot, a hole in his vision. Min-jae nodded.
Exactly. And while we're building the blind spot, I need to handle the water source itself. Ver isn't just looking for flow, he's looking for purity. He knows our refugees are drinking from the aqueducts. He's tracking the mana signature of clean water. Can you mask it? You can't hide clean water from the Inquisition. Not forever.
I don't need to hide it.
His voice dropping to a whisper.
I need to make it look like something else. Something dangerous. Something Ver would avoid until he had reinforcements.
Grindel's ears perked up.
Poison, acid, worse.
He reached into his coat and pulled out a small, sealed vial of iridescent fluid, the residue from the core's initial leak. It shimmered with an unnatural violet hue.
This is raw, unfiltered mana leakage from the drowned first floor. To a sensor, it looks like a holy anomaly, a blessing gone wrong. Ver will think we've accidentally tapped into a Saint King relic.
Seraphine stared at the vial.
I want him to hesitate. Fear is slower than anger. If he thinks he's walking into a holy hazard, he'll send his priests to bless the path before his knights follow. That buys us minutes. Minutes we can't afford, but seconds that might save lives.
He uncorked the vial and poured it into the primary drainage intake. The fluid swirled into the dark water, spreading out like oil on a pond. The system hummed louder, the pitch shifting from a low groan to a high, whining shriek. Environmental override unlocked, shifting corridor. The text appeared in Min-jae's vision, bright and stark against the violet gloom. He ignored it for now. Grindel, start moving the walls, create the curve. The goblin grunted and heaved on the levers again. The heavy stone slabs began to slide, grinding against the ancient tracks. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Seraphine watched the walls move, her arms crossed tightly over her chest.
And if Ver sees through it, if he realizes this isn't a relic, then we fight.
Though he knew it was a lie. They couldn't fight Ash Knights. Not here, but he won't. He's too arrogant. He thinks the Core Lord is a myth. He'll believe in the miracle before he believes in the monster. A sudden vibration shook the floor, stronger than before. The lights flickered violently, then died, leaving them in near darkness, save for the eerie glow of the runes. From above, the clanging of metal on stone grew louder. Closer.
He's here,
His voice trembling.
right above us.
Min-jae grabbed a torch from the wall and lit it, the flame casting long, dancing shadows against the shifting walls. Stay down. Don't make a sound. If he comes down, don't engage. Let him see the water, let him see the blessing, and then let him wonder. She pulled a dagger from her boot. Seraphine pulled a dagger from her boot, the steel glinting in the torchlight. He never wonders, he concludes. A heavy thud vibrated through the ceiling dust. Vare's voice drifted down, calm and clear as if he stood in the room with them. I know you are down there, Seraphine. I hear your heart beating against the stone. Min-jae held his breath, pressing himself against the cold wall. The system flashed. Surface detection risk, 97%, 81%. Vare stepped into the great shadow, his silhouette tall and imposing. He did not look at the shifting walls or the glowing vial residue. He looked directly at Seraphine's hiding spot. Stone remembers every hand that touches it. Seraphine stepped out from behind the pillar, her dagger raised, but her face unreadable. She smiled, a sharp, dangerous expression that mirrored Vare's own elegance. Then let it remember yours when we bury you. Vare tilted his head, studying her with paternal disappointment. Still so dramatic, it will get you killed. He turned to the shifting corridor, watching the water loop with analytical precision. You've bought time, Min-jae, but time is a resource you're spending too fast. I will return with blessings, and next time I will not bring knights. He stepped back into the darkness, his footsteps fading as he withdrew up the shaft. The risk counter ticked down slowly. Hunter escaped. The water in the aqueduct was not merely wet. It was a mirror stretched thin over the throat of the earth. Core Lord Morrow stood at its edge, his boots sinking into mud that smelled of old iron and rot. He did not look down at his own chest, where the cracked obsidian rosary felt like a hot coal against his ribs. He looked at the water. It rippled, though there was no wind in this drowned crypt, and from the darkness beneath the surface, something green began to bloom. Grindel Bricksnout stepped out from the shadows of a crumbling pillar, his heavy boots splashing softly. The goblin held a lantern that cast no light, only a faint vibration in the air. He looked at Morrow with an expression that was half amused, half anxious.
It's happening. The mirror isn't reflecting you, Core Lord. It's reflecting them.
Morrow tightened his grip on the edge of the aqueduct wall. His fingers were numb, but not from cold.
The Verdigris Court. They found us. They always find what is bleeding mana.
He gestured with the lantern toward the water. A tendril of emerald light uncoiled from the depths, forming a shape that was almost humanoid but distinctly wrong in its angles. Or rather, they find what is worth bargaining for. Seraphine Vale emerged from the other side of the tunnel, her silhouette sharp against the dim glow of the distant entrance. She carried herself with the rigid posture of a woman who had spent years waiting to be struck down. Her eyes locked onto Morrow, then flicked to the emerging light.
If you touch that, you invite them in. I have no choice.
Morrow said.
My core is at 12%. If I don't restore it before the Basilica seals for the night, we all die. This isn't a negotiation with guests, Seraphine. It's a lifeline thrown by sharks.
Grindel chuckled, a dry, rattling sound.
Sharks are honest, Your Grace. They want what you have. Not your soul, just the plans.
Morrow frowned.
What plans? The lower floors, the ones the Saint King buried. The Verdigris envoy wants the maps to the noble crypts. He says he's bored of digging through peasant graves and wants access to the gold that hasn't been looted yet.
Seraphine stepped forward, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword, though she did not draw it. Blackmail, she said.
He knows we have no power here. He thinks he can buy our secrets with whatever fey tricks they use to patch holes in their own reality. He offers moonstone mana.
He looked at the tendril of light, which was now holding out a small, glowing stone that pulsed with a rhythm that matched his failing heart.
Enough to fix the core. Enough to keep the Basilica standing for another decade. At what cost?
She didn't look at the light. She looked at Morrow.
If we give him the maps, he knows every crack in our foundation. He knows where the refugee tunnels are. He knows where the hidden aqueducts lead to the city above.
Morrow stared at the stone. It was beautiful. It was deadly.
If I refuse, the Basilica dies, and with it, everyone living in it.
Grindel nudged Morrow's leg with his boot. You're a planner, aren't you? You build homes for people who can't afford them. Don't let the math kill you. Morrow looked at Grindel, then at Seraphine. He saw the fear in Seraphine's eyes, not for herself, but for the people who would be exposed if he made the wrong choice. He saw the pragmatic hope in Grindel's eyes. Morrow closed his eyes for a second, feeling the crack in his chest widen.
Negotiate, but not on their terms.
Seraphine blinked.
You're going to take it? No.
He stepped closer to the water. The tendril reached out, brushing against his shin. It was cold, like ice that burned. I'm going to change the deal. Morrow opened his eyes. They were no longer just human. They were the color of the aqueduct water, deep and dark.
Tell them.
That we will not sell the maps, but we will trade access.
Grindel leaned in, whispering.
Access to what? To the dungeon?
Morrow said.
Not as a fey possession, as a neutral zone. A market. For the outcasts they can't touch in the city above. We give them legal foothold. They give us mana.
Seraphine stared at him.
A monster market? You want to turn our sanctuary into a trade hub for criminals and fey? I want to turn it into something they can't destroy.
He looked at the stone again. The light pulsed faster, impatient.
Because if I accept their offer as written, we become their vassals. If I refuse, we are corpses. A market is neither.
Grindel's eyes widened.
You're making it a treaty. I'm making it a business.
He extended his hand toward the water.
Tell your prince that Core Lord Morrow proposes a new contract.
The Basilica Bazaar open to all underground folk, protected by the core, in exchange for monthly moonstone tributes. No Morrow held his hand steady as the emerald light coiled around his wrist, binding him not with chains, but with pressure. The Verdigris envoy's voice did not come from the water. It vibrated in the stone beneath Morrow's boots, a chorus of dry leaves and cracking ice.
You propose to sell our shadows for coin?
The tone was polite, which made it more dangerous than any insult.
The court does not buy trash, Core Lord. We buy leverage. We offer sanctuary.
He did not pull his hand back. The cold of the fey magic seeped into his bones, a sharp contrast to the burning heat of the rosary on his chest. Sanctuary for those who cannot walk in the sun, for those who fear the Inquisition as much as they fear your court. Seraphine stepped up beside him, her boots splashing in the shallow mud. She did not look at the envoy. She looked at Morrow, checking his pulse with her eyes.
He means what he says. We are drowning in secrets. You are drowning in boredom. Let us trade.
Grindel wiped his hands on his apron, leaving streaks of gray dust. It's a good deal, the goblin said loudly. He gestured to the dark walls around them. Think of it, envoy, you get moonstone without lifting a finger. We get our roof from caving in, and everyone gets out of the rain. The light pulsed, a slow rhythmic throb that matched Morrow's fading heartbeat.
The price is higher.
The voice was closer now, inside Morrow's head.
The maps contain locations your Saint King hid for a reason. You give me the keys to the noble crypts, and I leave you the bones. Denied.
The word came out stripped of emotion. He felt the core integrity ticking down in the back of his mind. 11%. We keep the maps. You get the market rights. Temporary. Revocable if you breach the treaty. That is the offer. Grindel leaned forward, his ears twitching. And if they say no? Morrow looked down at the water. The tendril of light tightened around his wrist, biting into the skin.
Then I die, and you leave a corpse in a sealed tomb. Your moonstone dies with me.
The silence that followed was heavy, pressurized. The candlelight in the crypt seemed to dim, as if holding its breath. She didn't speak, she just waited, watching the light. Then the light recoiled. The tendril snapped back into the water with a hiss of steam. The emerald glow flared blindingly bright, then collapsed inward, leaving only a single stone hovering above the surface. It was no longer green. It was white as bone, pulsing with a soft, steady blue light. Moonstone mana. Pure. Unadulterated. The core lord bargains like a mortal who expects tomorrow. The envoy's voice echoed, fading into the darkness of the aqueduct. Let us see if you can keep it. The stone dropped into Morrow's palm. It was heavy, far heavier than it looked. The moment his skin touched it, the heat in his chest flared, then cooled. He gasped, falling to one knee as the mana rushed through his veins like liquid fire. Grindel scrambled back, shielding his eyes. By the stone, he whispered, "It's working." Morrow looked up. His vision was clearing. The cracks in his perception, the static that had been creeping into his thoughts, were gone. He felt the weight of the basilica above him not as a burden, but as an extension of himself. He could feel every brick, every mortar joint, every hidden seam where the stone met the earth.
31%.
His voice was raspy, but strong.
The core is stabilizing.
Grindel let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for years. He laughed, a short, sharp bark of relief. 31%. That's actually sustainable. With the tributes, we might last a generation. Seraphine stood up slowly, her face pale. She looked at the stone in Morrow's hand, then at the dark water where the mirror had been. Morrow closed his fingers around the moonstone. The light warmed his palm, soothing the ache in his bones. He stood up, his legs shaking but holding. I just created a neutral zone, he corrected her.
A place where neither the church nor the court has total control, where people can exist without being hunted. For now,
She turned away from him, walking toward the tunnel entrance. Her cloak trailed in the mud until one of them decides to break the treaty. And they will. They always do. Grindel clapped his hands together. The sound sharp and neutral is good, he said, turning to Seraphine. Neutral pays bills. Seraphine did not look at him. She kept her eyes fixed on the dark tunnel where the aqueduct had receded. You think this is a game, she said.
You think we can just open the doors and let the world in because you found a magic rock. It is not a rock.
He held up his hand, watching the blue pulse of the moonstone fade into his skin. The pain in his chest was gone, replaced by a humming clarity. It is a treaty, and treaties require enforcement. Enforcement? Seraphine turned on him. Her face was hard, her jaw set.
Who enforces it? You? With what authority? You are a core lord of a ruin. They will treat you like a merchant until they decide to eat you. They have no choice.
He stepped past the water's edge, his boots crunching on the wet stone. If they break the treaty, they lose the moonstone. If they stop the moonstone, the basilica collapses. I do not need an army to enforce it. I just need gravity. Grindel grinned, showing teeth stained with mortar dust. Gravity is a reliable partner, he said, unlike nobles. Unlike priests. Unlike me when I'm hungry. He rubbed his stomach. Speaking of which, does this market have food? Or do we have to eat the Fae? Morrow looked at Grindel. The goblin was shaking slightly, the adrenaline wearing off. Morrow could see the tremor in his hands, the way he leaned against a pillar for support. He knew what it cost him to stand straight. He also knew he had no mana to spare for healing potions.
There will be food. If we establish the bazaar, people will bring it. They will need supplies from the surface to maintain their cover. We become the funnel.
Seraphine laughed, a cold, brittle sound. You are building a trap, she said. A very convenient trap. You feed them enough to keep them loyal, then you starve them when you need leverage. That is not sanctuary, Morrow. That is management. Morrow stopped walking. He turned to face her. The silence between them was thick, charged with the weight of what they had just done. Behind him, the basilica groaned, a low sound of settling stone that vibrated in his teeth. It was not pain anymore. It was acknowledgement.
That is exactly what I am doing.
His voice was flat, devoid of apology.
I am managing our survival.
Seraphine flinched as if struck. She looked away, her eyes glistening in the dim light. You sound like them, she whispered.
The Inquisitors, the Saints, they all started with survival. Then they ended with fire. I am not them.
He took a step closer to her. He wanted to reach out, to touch her shoulder, but he knew the gesture would feel like a lie right now. Instead, he kept his hands at his sides.
I have no desire to rule anyone. I only want to keep the roof from falling on our heads. Your roof is made of bones.
She turned away from him, walking toward the exit of the crypt. Her cloak swirled around her legs, heavy with mud and water. And you are using them as currency. Grindel watched her go, his expression unreadable. He looked at Morrow, then down at the floor.
She's right, about the bones. We are walking on graves, core lord. Every brick in that upper hall is a person who didn't make it.
Morrow looked at the ceiling, where the vaulted stone loomed overhead. He could feel the weight of it, the history of it. He could feel the dead. Not as ghosts, but as mass, as pressure.
We cannot build on air, we build on what is there. We fix it, we use it. That is the planner's job.
Grindel snorted. Planners always think they are above the mess. He spat on the ground, a dry, dark glob that landed with a faint hiss. Well, I hope your mess pays well, because I'm tired of eating rat stew for dinner. Morrow ignored him. He walked to the edge of the water again. The pool was still, the surface smooth as glass. It was not enough to fix everything. It was not even enough to rebuild the upper floors, but it was enough to start. He needed more. He needed resources. He needed people who would not ask questions about where the food came from or why the walls were stained with old blood.
Grindel, prepare the lower levels. Clear the debris. Seal the entrances that lead directly to the noble crypts. We cannot risk leaks.
Grindel nodded, pulling a piece of chalk from his pocket. He began marking lines on the floor, his movements quick and precise. Sealing crypts is expensive, he said.
It requires mortar, it requires labor. Do we have either? We have neither.
He looked at Seraphine's retreating back.
But we will have both.
Seraphine paused. Seraphine paused, her hand resting on the cold iron doorframe. She did not turn around, but her silhouette stiffened against the gloom of the tunnel. You cannot seal them all, she said. Her voice was low, stripped of its earlier anger and replaced by a weary pragmatism that Morrow had come to recognize as her true default setting. There are roots in those crypts, fey roots. They dig where they want. Grindel wiped the chalk dust from his forehead with a ragged sleeve. She's got a point, Core Lord. The Verdigris court doesn't just send envoys, they send worms. If you seal the exits, you strangle your own supply lines before they even open. He tapped his pickaxe against a nearby pillar, the rhythmic clink-clink echoing in the damp air. We need to manage the flow, not block it, like a dam with sluice gates. Morrow watched the water lap at his boots. The silence of the basilica was no longer empty, it was waiting. He could feel the pulse of the core beneath his ribs, steady and strong at 31%. It was enough to hold the roof up, but not enough to heal the rot creeping into the foundation. He needed more than moonstone. He needed legitimacy. And he needed to know what the Verdigris envoy had meant by
Expecting tomorrow. Min-jae.
finally turning to face him. She used his first name only when the stakes were absolute, her eyes searching his face for any sign of the man who had bargained with monsters. You are playing a dangerous game. The Verdigris court does not give gifts. They trade in debt. What did you promise them besides maps? Morrow tightened his fist around the moonstone, feeling its warmth seep into his palm. He could see the ghost of the envoy's smile, sharp and predatory.
I offered them a market.
A place where they can trade without fear of the church's inquisitors, in exchange for their silence on the lower floors, and in exchange for your silence on their methods?
His grin fading into a frown. He looked down at his feet, then back up at Morrow. There are things down there, Core Lord. Things that don't bleed like we do. If we invite them to our doorstep, we have to decide what we eat when the food runs out. Seraphine stepped forward, her boots splashing in the shallow water. They will test us, she said.
They will send their little ones first. The goblins, the kobolds, the things that scrape along the walls. They will come looking for warmth and light, and when they come, what do we give them? We have nothing but stone and secrets. We have rules.
He walked toward her, the distance between them closing with heavy, deliberate steps. We establish boundaries. We decide who enters and who is turned away. We become the gatekeepers of this dungeon. Grindel let out a short, sharp laugh. Gatekeepers? You think we're a hotel chain now? We're a tomb, Morrow, a very expensive, very damp tomb, and tombs don't have guard patrols. They have guards who sleep with one eye open and hope the dead stay buried. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. I like your plan, I do. Really. But how do you propose we enforce these rules without a single drop of mana to spare? Do you want me to hit every merchant with my pickaxe? Morrow stopped inches from Seraphine. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the shadows that clung to her like a second cloak. She was tired of fighting alone. tired of carrying the weight of the basilica on her back while he fixed the foundation.
No, you don't need to hit anyone. You just need to be ready to break their toys.
Seraphine frowned, tilting her head. What does that mean?
It means we prepare for the day they try to take more than they pay for.
He looked past her, toward the dark tunnel leading to the surface.
The Verdigris court wants access to the noble crypts. They think the maps I gave them show the way. But I gave them a key that only works if they follow our schedule.
Grindel's ears twitched. He pushed off the wall, stepping closer. A trap, he murmured. You built a trap into their contract. I built a bottleneck, Morrow corrected. Every time they move through the bazaar, they have to pass through checkpoints. Checkpoints that I control. If they break the treaty, we close the gates. And if we close the gates, the moonstone stops flowing. And if the moonstone stops flowing... He let the sentence hang in the damp air, heavy with implication. It wasn't a question, it was an observation of the sheer audacity required to hold a power like the Verdigris court at bay with nothing but infrastructure and threats.
I'm balancing the ledger.
He turned back to Grindel.
We need to fortify the lower levels. Not just seal them, fortify them. Reinforce the walls, set up choke points, install traps that don't kill but immobilize. We need to be able to lock down sections of the basilica in minutes.
Grindel rubbed his chin, thinking. That'll take stone. Lots of it. And time we don't have. The stone beneath Min-jae's cheek was cold, a stark contrast to the fever dream heat that had been burning through his veins since he woke. The air smelled of damp moss, old blood and ozone, the sharp, metallic tang of magic waking up after centuries of slumber. Above him, far beyond the cracked ceiling of the drowned crypt, a vibration thrummed through the rock. It was not the rhythmic pumping of the aqueducts he had spent the last few hours untangling, nor the shuffling of Grindel's clumsy feet as the goblins scrambled away in fear. This was deeper. It was a harmonic resonance, a choir singing in perfect, terrifying unison, vibrating through the very bones of the basilica. Min-jae pushed himself up, his fingers scraping against black obsidian. The rosary fused to his chest pulsed with a faint violet light, matching the rhythm of the sound above. Core integrity at 12%, the voice said, not in his ears, but in the center of his mind. It was cold, detached, and utterly merciless.
Harvest mark detected in Cinder Ward. Calibration pulse imminent.
Min-jae's head snapped up. The violet roots that had once threatened to consume the city were now dormant, coiled like sleeping snakes, beneath the floorboards of the world. He could feel them. He could feel the weight of the stone above him, layer upon layer of history and hypocrisy pressing down on his shoulders.
What is it?
His voice raspy from disuse.
A celebration.
The Saint King Aurelian's soul marks the anniversary of his ascension. Worship channels through the basilica's spire. A sunbeam pierces downward. It seeks a focal point. A sacrifice, Min-jae realized, the horror cold in his gut. They're using the festival to calibrate the mark for mass harvest. Correction, the mark is already applied. This pulse reinforces it. If left unchecked, every child in Cinder Ward will be branded for extraction in 3 days. You have a choice, Core Lord Morrow. Min-jae stood, his legs trembling. The darkness of the crypt seemed to swirl around him, responding to his rising adrenaline. What are my options? You can conceal the basilica, the system suggested, redirect the mana into the hidden aqueducts, preserve your sanctuary. The pulse will pass through you unresisted. You remain hidden. The children in Cinder Ward will bear the mark, but their lives will continue for now. Or, Min-jae demanded, you can intercept it. Expose your existence to the entire city. The violet roots will erupt through the cathedral floor, shielding the marked children from the calibration. But you will no longer be a ghost in the walls. You will be a target. Min-jae closed his eyes. He thought of the children in Cinder Ward, their names unknown to him, their lives already priced by the Saint King's arithmetic.
If I hide, I save myself, but I condemn them. Precisely, a rational calculation favors preservation. Rationality is a luxury of the safe.
He looked down at his hands. They were stained with black soil and glowing with faint violet veins. I designed cities to serve people, not developers. I failed them above ground. I won't fail them now. You are certain? The system asked. The tone was curious, almost human. Defiance raises your dungeon threat rank from E to C. The Holy Empire has learned you exist. Aurelian's soul will hunt you with the fury of a god betrayed. Min-jae laughed, a bitter, dry sound. Good, let him come. I'm tired of running in the dark. He clenched his fists. The rosary on his chest flared, blindingly bright. Defy the sun. Above them, the vibration shifted. The choir's song changed key, rising from a mournful drone to a triumphant, deafening chord. The stone beneath Min-jae's feet grew hot. The Basilica of the Ascended Saint was not silent during the anniversary. It roared with 10,000 voices, a tidal wave of faith and fervor that shook the stained glass windows high above the nave. Saint King Aurelian's soul stood on the dais, his white robes immaculate despite the humidity of the crowded hall. He was charismatic, patient, and utterly monstrous in the way he treated individuals as numbers in a sacred equation. To him, the crowd was not a collection of souls, but a battery, a source of power. Brothers, sisters, Aurelian's voice boomed, amplified by the acoustics of the vaulted ceiling. Today, we celebrate the day I accepted the sun's blessing. Today, we offer our gratitude. The crowd cheered. They threw flowers. They cried tears of joy. They did not see the thin, invisible thread of light that stretched from Aurelian's chest down into the earth. They did not feel the pulse of mana flowing downward, seeking an anchor. Aurelian raised his hand. The sunbeam outside the great rose window intensified, focusing through the lens of the Saint King's will. It pierced downward, a needle of pure light aimed at the sealed heart of the city. Grindel scrambled over a pile of rubble, his small hands digging into the soft earth that had replaced the solid floor moments before. He stopped at the edge of the fissure, staring down into the violet abyss. The smell of ozone was gone, replaced by the scent of blooming nightshade and old stone.
You broke the ceiling.
His eyes wide.
You broke the holy ceiling.
Min-jae stepped to the edge, the rosary on his chest pulsing in time with the distant bell. He looked up. Through the jagged tear in the masonry, a shaft of sunlight pierced the darkness, illuminating dust motes that danced like angry spirits. But the light did not touch him. It curved around the thick violet roots that had erupted from the floor, weaving a protective canopy over the lower levels.
The pulse is stopped.
He could feel the mana swirling in the air, heavy and charged.
The children are safe.
Grindel turned, his face pale. The Saint King saw it. I felt the ground shake when he spoke. He knows, the whole city heard you answer him. Min-jae gripped the edge of the hole. Let them hear. Let them know someone is still down here. Above them, the choir's song changed. It was no longer a mournful drone. It was a defiant chord, echoing through the cracks in the foundation, answering the royal hymn with a voice that belonged to the earth, not the sky. The vibration rattled Min-jae's teeth. He closed his eyes and listened. In the basilica above, the sunbeam hit the floor where Min-jae had stood only moments ago. It struck nothing but air, splashing harmlessly against the newly formed roots that had erupted from the stone, shielding the space beneath. The crowd gasped. Aurelian's soul lowered his hand. The light in his eyes was not anger. It was curiosity. He walked to the edge of the dais and looked down through the cracks in the floor. The violet glow illuminated the depths below. He saw a figure standing amidst the roots. He saw the obsidian rosary fused to the stranger's chest. He heard the echo of the choir beneath his feet, answering his own voice. Aurelian tilted his head. "What are you beneath my city?" Min-jae looked up. He couldn't see Aurelian, but he could feel the weight of the gaze from above. The Saint King's voice was clear, cut through the stone like a blade. The reply came from Min-jae's throat before he could think it through. "The part of it you buried alive." Aurelian smiled. It was a small, polite smile that did not reach his eyes. Buried. How poetic. How convenient. Min-jae felt the rosary burn against his skin. The roots pulsed around him, tightening like muscles flexing in warning. He knew then that the game had changed. He was no longer hidden. He was a player on the board.
Grindel.
Turning back to the goblin,
Get everyone to the lower tunnels. Now.
Grindel hesitated. What about the basilica?
The basilica is above me. I am below. We are no longer in the same war.
Grindel nodded, his fear replaced by a strange reverence. He backed away, scrambling over the rubble. Min-jae remained at the edge of the fissure, looking up into the shaft of sunlight. The city outside was cheering. They did not know their children were safe. They did not know the cost of that safety. Aurelian's voice came again, softer this time, meant only for Min-jae. I will find you, core lord. And when I do, I will ask you a different question. Min-jae closed his eyes. He could feel the system's presence in the back of his mind, cold and detached. He ignored it. He had made his choice. Now he had to live with the consequences. The roots beneath him shifted, adjusting to the new reality. The basilica was no longer a tomb, it was a fortress, and Min-jae Moro was its warden. The silence that followed Aurelian's last word was not empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air before a storm breaks. Min-jae felt the violet roots around his feet twitch, sensing his spike in adrenaline. They tightened, anchoring him to the stone, pulling heat from his core to sustain the barrier above. He had seconds, perhaps minutes, before the Saint King ordered his archers to breach the ceiling. Grindel returned, dragging a ragged cloak over his shoulders. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold it.
They are moving.
Glancing up at the fissure where Aurelian's face had vanished into darkness. The refugees from Cinder Ward, they are hiding in the aqueducts. The water is rising. Min-jae looked at the goblin. The threat rank had shifted. He was no longer a ghost. He was a target.
How many? 32, and the little ones. They do not understand why the sky is screaming.
Bring them to the drowned first floor, Min-jae commanded. The aqueducts were flooded, but they were deep, dark, and defensible. It was the only place in the basilica that Aurelian's light could not penetrate. Tell them to stay below the waterline. Do not let anyone speak above a whisper. Grindel nodded, his eyes wide with terror and trust mixed together.
What will you do? I have work to do.
He turned away from the fissure, walking deeper into the gloom of the basilica. The violet glow of his rosary illuminated patches of damp wall, revealing murals long forgotten by the world above. Scenes of harvests that ended in blood, of saints who demanded more than their share. Keep the aqueducts clear. If anyone asks where I am, tell them I went to pray. Grindel stared at him for a long moment. Pray? To whom? Min-jae stopped. He looked at his hands, the black soil still caked under his fingernails.
To no one. Just to the stone.
He left Grindel standing by the edge of the roots and moved toward the center of the nave. The massive doors of the basilica were sealed shut, fused together by centuries of neglect and a recent seismic shock, but they were not airless. Cracks ran through the masonry, allowing slivers of the chaotic noise from above to filter down. Cheers. Confusion. Fear. Min-jae pressed his ear against the cold stone. He could hear Aurelian's voice again, calm, steady, weaving a narrative of divine will that masked the failure of the calibration. A shadow moved in the corner of his eye. Min-jae spun around, raising a hand to summon a defensive ward, but no mana came. His reserves were locked behind the expenditure of the roots. He stood exposed, breathing hard, facing an empty corner. You're bleeding, a voice said. Min-jae turned. A figure stepped out from behind a fallen pillar. It was not Grindel. It was smaller, slender, draped in tatters of gray wool that smelled of mildew and old meat. Her face was pale, her eyes dark pools in the violet light. She held a wooden staff carved with runes that had long since faded to illegibility.
Who are you?
Min-jae asked. He did not lower his hand.
I am Ilara.
She did not bow. She did not show fear. She simply walked closer, inspecting the cracks in the floor where the sunbeam had failed. I was awake when the bell cracked. I heard you answer him. Min-jae tensed. You're from Cinder Ward? Ilara shook her head. No, I have always been here, in the walls, listening. She looked up at Min-jae, her gaze piercing.
You are not what they say you are. The Saint King calls you a demon. Grindel calls you Lord. You smell like rain and blood.
Choices have weights.
Elara said. She tapped her staff on the stone. A faint hum resonated through the floor, vibrating in Min-jae's teeth. That weight is dragging us down. The basilica remembers its purpose. You have awakened it. Protection requires power, Elara countered. She took another step. Her eyes locked onto the obsidian rosary at his chest. You have none left. You spent it on roots. Roots grow toward light. They seek anchors. Who did you anchor to? Min-jae felt a chill crawl up his spine.
I anchored to my purpose. Purpose is a luxury for the living.
She reached out, her fingers brushing the air near his hand. Her skin was cold, dry as parchment. The Saint King is not hunting you because he dislikes you. He is hunting you because you are a variable he cannot calculate. Elara tilted her head, the gray wool of her cloak slipping over one shoulder. He relies on the equation of fear. You broke it. Min-jae lowered his hand slightly, though his muscles remained coiled.
I protected them. You disrupted the flow.
She walked past him, tapping her staff against a crack in the wall. Dust fell like snow. The basilica is not a weapon. It is a machine, and machines require fuel. Min-jae felt the rosary pulse against his ribs, a slow, dying heartbeat. The violet light dimmed as his reserves plummeted to 11%.
What does it want? Order.
She turned back, her dark eyes reflecting the faint glow of his core. Aurelian wants worship. You want survival. They are different paths to the same destination. Min-jae shook his head. I don't want a destination. I just want to keep them safe. Safe? Elara laughed, a dry, brittle sound. There is no safety in the dark, Core Lord. Only endurance. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the silence of the nave. You have declared war on the sun. Now you must learn to live in the shadow it casts. Min-jae stared at her, his breath catching in his throat. The weight of her words settled on him, heavier than the stone above his head. He had saved the children today, but the cost was higher than he had imagined. He was no longer just a refugee or a lord. He was a symbol, and symbols are targets.
I need to rest.
Turning away from her.
The roots need time to regenerate.
Elara watched him go, her expression unreadable. Then rest, she said softly. But do not sleep for long. The Saint King is already planning his next move. Min-jae closed his eyes, leaning against the cold stone wall. He could feel the vibrations of the city above, the cheers fading into a dull hum. The basilica was quiet, but it was a false peace. He knew it was only a matter of time before Aurelian returned with fire and steel. For now, he had bought them time. But time is a finite resource, and he had.